Chapter 1550. Chen Zhao was pissed off, for had forced him to skip dinner. When Chen Zhao arrived at Chantilly Hospital, for was having dinner with another man in the hospital's cafeteria. The most important thing was that the man looked handsome and rich. If he were in the movies, he would be like Tony Stark. Seeing Four grinning from ear to ear at the man's teasing, Chen Zhao got even angrier. Chen Zhao walked up and said in annoyance, "For I rushed here without even eating dinner. You're having so much fun chatting with someone here. Am I disturbing you?" Moscow priest lifted his head and looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. "For, is this your friend? Chen, did you come by plane? I thought you'd need at least an hour." For was also confused. The distance between Moon Coast and Chantilly Hospital was at least 80 kilometers. 30 kilometers were in the city. How did Chen Zhao get to the hospital so quickly? That was why Four had come to the cafeteria to eat first. In fact, it was Chen Zhao's first time driving a sports car. In the past, it was just driving. Today Chen Zhao was suddenly interested. He sped on the highway in his Porsche 918. Chen Zhao drove for less than 10 minutes on the 50-kilometer highway. With Chen Zhao's superhuman reflexes, driving close to 300 kilometers per hour was nothing. Of course, the price was that Chen Zhao would have to change the tires of his sports car tomorrow. After that, Chen Zhao felt bored. He wouldn't do it again even if he was beaten to death. No matter how fast the sports car went, it couldn't be faster than Chen Zhao himself. There was no excitement to speak of. To be honest, Chen Zhao had tried it in front of his house. On the ground, Chen Zhao could run as fast as a fighter jet. Even Chen Zhao himself couldn't change the direction of his extreme speed. Unless he ran in a straight line, Chen Zhao would crash into the obstacles on the road. Up until now, Chen Zhao hadn't found any clothes that he could wear while running at full speed. Sometimes, Chen Zhao envied the Hulk's underwear. No matter how big his body became, no matter what kind of attack he suffered, it could still remain intact. Once Chen Zhao unleashed his full speed, the first thing to break would be his clothes. Even Qingyi Haze couldn't protect his clothes. Recently, he had been thinking about using dragon scales to make underwear. Otherwise, once the battle started, Chen Zhao might give himself a torn clothes buff first. "Mr. Moscow, this is the doctor I introduced to you." Chen Zhao looked at Moscow. For some reason he felt that Moscow was strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange about it. Moscow Pearl had an extraordinary aura and was handsome. He was tall and slender. Even if he were to appear on the runway, he would still look good. However, Chen Zhao felt that there was something indescribable about Moscow Prior. Temperament? Chen Zhao looked at Mason in confusion. For noticed that Chen Zhao kept staring at Moscow Prior with a strange expression. Mason also felt goosebumps from Chen Zhao's stare. "Sir, is there anything on me?" "Ah." Chen Zhao shook his head. "You don't seem to have any injuries, so you don't need my treatment." Four's face darkened. She'd already told Chen Zhao over the phone that it was a comatose patient from a car accident. Chen Zhao clearly didn't want to help. If Four didn't threaten him with a favor, Chen Zhao probably wouldn't move at all. "Mr. Mason is the biggest farmer in California," Four introduced. "He's my sister's boyfriend. He's also a medical professor at UCLA." The two shook hands. Chen Zhao put more strength into his grip. Mason's face reddened, but he didn't make a sound. Chen Zhao wasn't purposely making things difficult for Mason. Chen Zhao only wanted to confirm if Mason was a spiritualist. Even if he wasn't an enhancer, his hidden magic would automatically be released when he was attacked. This was an instinctive reaction of the body, but Chen Zhao didn't feel any magic from Moscow Prior. It seemed that he wasn't a spiritualist, for had thought too much. With Four's ability, it wasn't that easy to hide magic from him. "What's the relationship between the patient and this farmer?" Chen Zhao asked. "The patient is called Nulong Kirik. He's one of Mr. Mason's farmers," Four said. "You said that Nulong Kirik is a witness for a case. What's going on?" "Mr. Chen, you're a doctor, right?" Mason furrowed his brows. He felt that Chen Zhao was being too nosy. "I like to listen to gossip. Only then will I be in the mood to treat patients." Hearing that, Mason and Four both stared at Chen Zhao with darkened expressions. "Do you know about the poisoning incident at Daipa Farm half a year ago?" Four asked. Chen Zhao froze. As a doctor, he obviously knew about it. It was said that 40 or so employees of the farm had a party at night and went to get some corn, potatoes, and sweet potatoes for the party. In the end, more than 30 people got poisoned and 13 died. The incident was huge. As a doctor, Chen Zhao had also received some data. He knew that they'd been poisoned with cyanide, and it was found in the food. Cyanide was extremely poisonous and had a high fatality rate. Most of the time, people died before they could even save them. Then, the police found cyanide on the plants in many fields of Daipa farm. Cyanide couldn't be used to make pesticides, so it was obvious that someone had purposely poisoned the sprayed pesticides. 3 months ago, Nulong Kirik admitted that he was the poisoner, and that the person who ordered him was Lila Gavich, a billionaire and the boss of Beck Chemicals. His main product is cyanide, Fur said. But a month ago, Nulong Kirik was involved in a tragic car accident while escorting a shipment. He fell into a coma as a result. Was he silenced? Chen Zhao asked. From the current situation, it looks like he was silenced, Fur said. Chen Zhao looked at Fur. What does this have to do with you? Chen Zhao couldn't help but think that Fur had asked him for help because she liked Moscow Pearl. In the list of poisoned deaths, there's a child that I just cured. He's only 10 years old. He survived throat cancer, but he couldn't survive a conspiracy. Chen Zhao looked at Macy. Why did that patient stand out and expose us? Even if he turns himself in, he'll go to jail for decades. Remember the domain name of this book, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1551. One of the victims is Nulong Kirik's family. As a capitalist, Chen Zhao had gradually come to understand how sinister capitalists could be. Even if things seemed clear, it was not certain whether the truth was as everyone saw it. Of course, guesses were just guesses. Even if the truth was different, it had nothing to do with Chen Zhao. He was here to return Fur's favor. Actually, the sisters were quite similar. After Fur finished dinner, the three returned to the hospital. In the hospital, Chen Zhao saw someone he was familiar with, Charla. Charla had just anesthetized a patient and walked out of the surgery room. In America, being an anesthetist was the easiest and the highest paid job. Of course, a top-notch anesthetist like Charla sold her skills. One had to know that many anesthetics were harmful to the body, so the control of dosage was also very particular. Moscow looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao seemed to know everyone in the hospital. The doctors and nurses that came and went all greeted him. Chen, can you hurry? There's still a patient waiting for you. He's been in bed for a month anyway. There's no hurry, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. He had no intention of speeding up at all. A female nurse walked over and said some nonsense. When they reached the ICU, Chen Zhao pushed open the door and saw an unconscious patient lying on the bed. After a month, Nulong Kirik was as thin as a stick. He could only rely on injections to maintain his life. This kind of ICU to maintain vital signs cost thousands of dollars per day. A normal family couldn't afford it at all. When Chen Zhao saw Nulong Kirik's soul, he was stunned. There was a nail in the head of Nulong Kirik's soul. Clearly, someone had done something to Nulong Kirik's soul. Who came here? Chen Zhao asked. Is there a problem? Fur asked, confused. Just asking, Chen Zhao said calmly. Other than the attending doctor, there should only be the nurses, Fur said. Aren't you the attending doctor? It's not like you don't know that I'm in charge of oncology. Fur rolled her eyes. I'm not familiar with neurology. Other than the attending doctor and nurses, did anyone else come in? Do I count? Moscow priest took the initiative to speak. Doesn't he have any other family to visit him? Yes, but now all of his relatives want to cut ties with him. Even though he has been unconscious for more than a month, not a single relative has come to visit him. Chen Zhao snickered. This was basically being betrayed by his own people. However, when he thought about it, it made sense. For a bit of money, he did such a thing, causing the deaths of dozens of people, and even his own family. It would be strange if such a person was not deserted by his friends and family. Chen, can you wake him up? Fur looked at him. Actually, she wasn't sure if Chen Zhao could wake slave Kirik up again. After all, he was in a vegetative state. Chen Zhao had awakened a vegetative state last time, but that didn't mean he would succeed the second time. I'll check first, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao walked up and checked Nulong's body. Nulong Kirik's body was basically unharmed. Then the problem lay in his soul. Chen Zhao moved his palm to Narang's forehead. Mason, who was standing behind Chen Zhao, suddenly raised an eyebrow. Even though Chen Zhao didn't turn around, he could see Moscow's every movement and expression. He really wasn't a normal person. Chen Zhao had always suspected that Moscow was a spiritualist. For spiritualists, if they sensed something, 99% of it would come true. Now that Chen Zhao confirmed that there was something wrong with Moscow, he was even more certain. As expected, a spiritualist's intuition was never wrong. Chen Zhao pinched the invisible nail between his two fingers. He pulled it lightly and Nulong's soul moved along with it. Chen, do you have a solution? For asked. For go out for a while. I have something to discuss with Mr. Moscow. What? For frowned. What couldn't he say in front of her? The consultation fee. I don't want you to see my ugly face. Chen Zhao grinned. For glared at him annoyed. Even if she used a favor to invite Chen Zhao, she couldn't just let him take the consultation fee. Fine, I'll leave it to you. I'm leaving. For turned and left the ICU. Chen Zhao turned to look at Moscow priest. Mr. Moscow, you're a spiritualist too, right? Moscow looked at Chen Zhao and shook his head. I'm not. You're not? Mr. Moscow, you don't have to hide it from me. I'm indeed not a spiritualist, but I'm also from the spiritual world, Moscow said meaningfully. What do you mean? Chen Zhao was confused. Not a spiritualist, but someone from the spiritual world? Whatever. Since he couldn't understand, he wouldn't care. It didn't have much to do with him anyway. So you stabbed the nail in his forehead? Chen Zhao asked. Yes. Moscow nodded. I did it. Why? Don't you want him to wake up? I did it to save his life, Moscow said. That car accident almost cost him his life. If I hadn't used a secret technique to lock his soul with the soul-locking nail, he would have died a long time ago, said Moscow Pule. Then take it off now, Chen Zhao said. Take it off. Are you sure? Moscow looked at Chen Zhao hesitantly. If I take it off, his soul might leave his body and dissipate. Take it off, Chen Zhao said calmly. I'm a doctor, Chen Zhao said calmly. I'm a doctor who knows a lot about the soul. Chen Zhao didn't even need to draft a lie. He'd only read one magic book and hadn't finished it. But in terms of treating soul damage, even Satan might not be better than him. Moscow reached out and took off the soul-locking nail. His technique was very special. At least Chen Zhao could see something, but he couldn't understand it. Moscow clearly didn't use any magic, and it didn't seem to be magic either. Chen Zhao couldn't help but glance at him a few more times. But Chen Zhao didn't have the time to chat with him now. After he pulled the nail out, he immediately went forward and poured his immortal power into Nulong Kirik's soul. The effect of immortal power was very good. It immediately stabilized Nulong Kirik's soul and allowed his soul to reunite with his body. Chapter 1552. Mason was also astonished by Chen Zhao's methods. Healing the soul. This wasn't something an ordinary person could do. At least, he'd never heard of anyone who could heal a damaged soul. Magic. Doubt rose in Mason's mind. All right. Chen Zhao stood up. I don't want to know about the inside story. It has nothing to do with me. You understand? Of course, this has nothing to do with you, Mr. Chen. Chen Zhao didn't want to get involved in this. Don't get far involved either. Chen Zhao didn't know if Moscow priest had dragged Four into this intentionally or not. Of course, it was also possible that Chen Zhao was overthinking. Mason didn't bother to explain. He wasn't familiar with Chen Zhao, so he didn't think that there was a need to explain. At this moment, Nulong Kirik moved and opened his eyes. Both Chen Zhao and Mason looked at Nulong Kirik. Seeing Mason, Nero's expression changed in an instant. He pulled off the blanket and jumped off the bed, wanting to rush out of the room. Moscow Pule moved like a nimble monkey. He jumped over the bed, and with the tap of his toes, he somersaulted in front of Nulong Kirik to block him. Nero Kirik, where do you think you're going? Mason asked calmly. To be honest, with Nero's current condition, he couldn't run very far. Far heard the commotion and pushed the door open. When he saw Nulong Kirik standing there, he was shocked. Chun he. Looks like he's already recovered. Chen Zhao shrugged. for didn't understand the situation. Nero Kirik was curled up in a corner, while Moscow Pule stood in front of him, looking down at him from above. Everyone should be responsible for their own actions. Am I right, Nulang Kirik? Narang Kirik raised his head and looked at Moscow Pule in fear. Far, how about you treat me to supper? But here, what's wrong? What can I do for you? Miss Far, thank you for your help. I think I should get him discharged. Also, the police will be here soon, Mason said. All right. For could tell that something was wrong, but she didn't pursue the matter further. I hope the culprit will be punished. Of course you'll see. Chun Zhao and Four left the ward. Chun Zhao's mind was still thinking about Moscow Pride's elegant movements. That set of movements looked very ordinary, and even most gymnasts could do it. But to Chun Zhao it was different. Maybe gymnasts could do it too. But it was impossible for him to be as elegant and casual as Moscow Pule. He didn't look like he was completing a difficult movement. It was more like he was jogging or walking easily. However, Chun Zhao indeed did not feel any magic from Moscow prior. Chun, do you know what's going on? Farron could not hold back his curiosity. Chun Zhao shook his head. I don't know. It has nothing to do with me. I don't want to get involved in some messy scheme. Scheme? You're saying that Mr. Moscow has a scheme? I didn't say that. I'm just reminding you that a rich person like him will have a lot of complicated entanglements, even if it's an ordinary lawsuit. You're rich too, right? For said looking at Chun Zhao. You're not any less than him. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Ha! You don't even have a medical license. You dare say you're a law-abiding citizen? Don't ask me for help next time, Chun Zhao shouted. That won't do. Just once isn't enough to repay the favor you owe me. I shouldn't have asked you for help in the first place, Chun Zhao said in annoyance. At that moment, the elevator door in front of them opened. Two men wearing windbreakers, gentlemen's hats, and sunglasses walked out. That's weird. It's such a hot day. But someone's wrapped up so tightly, For said. Chun Zhao glanced at the two and chuckled. Maybe they're fans of The Matrix. With that, Chun Zhao pressed the elevator button. When Chun Zhao and Four walked out of the building, gunshots came from upstairs. The window of one of the wards flashed twice. Then, a figure broke through the window and fell to the ground. For cried out in surprise and hurriedly ran over. The person who fell down was Mason Pryor. Mr. Mesco, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Although Mason fell from the third floor, he seemed to be fine. Fury was written all over Mason's face. He angrily punched the ground with his fist. Damn it, damn it. Nulang Kirik is dead. They have spies in the hospital. The moment Nulang Kirik woke up, their gunman came. Gunner. It's those two from before? For suddenly understood. Chun Zhao looked at Moscow's expression. It seemed that he was really angry. If he was pretending, it could only be said that his acting skills were really good. Where are the two gunmen now? Are they still in the hospital? For asked. For don't mess around, Chun Zhao said, pulling her back. You're a doctor, not a cop. They're all dangerous killers. But they're hiding in the hospital. It's possible. As they spoke, the entire hospital building suddenly fell into darkness. They cut off the hospital's power. Chun Zhao shrugged. A while later, the police arrived and the three took statements. More police searched the hospital building to see if the two gunmen were still in the hospital. The good news was that apart from Nulang Kirik, no one else was injured. On the other hand, Nulang Kirik was shot in the head with a single shot. Even Chun Zhao couldn't come back from the dead in such a situation. Chun Zhao and Moscow stood not far away, for was still taking statements. You found the two gunmen? Why do you think so? Nulang Kirik is still in the ward. He hasn't come out yet. How could anyone know? Chun Zhao raised his doubt. Less than 10 minutes after Nulang Kirik woke up, the two gunmen came. I can't help but suspect that someone leaked the news. Apart from me, for and you, no one else knows that Nulang Kirik woke up. Anyway, it's definitely not the two of us. Moscow's expression was very ugly. Suddenly he thought of a possibility. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1553. The ICU was monitored 24 hours a day. It was monitored 24 hours a day. Moscow Pule thought of this possibility. Chun Zhao was an outsider. So no matter what he guessed, it had nothing to do with him. For who was recording the police statement had already finished. She wasn't in a good mood. She'd asked Chen Zhao to treat Nuniyang Kirik. But Nuniyang was cured, but he was dead. For go to Moon Villa and stay there for a few days, Chen Zhao said. You can also take a few days off from the hospital. Although For probably wouldn't get involved in these messy things, Chen Zhao was still worried. No matter what, For was his sister-in-law. No thanks. For rejected Chen Zhao's suggestion. There's a lot of work at the hospital. I don't want to take a break. For rejected Chen Zhao's suggestion. Stay away from that man, Chen Zhao whispered. He's dangerous. However, Moscow Pool seemed to still hear Chen Zhao's voice from more than 20 meters away. He couldn't help but glance at Chen Zhao. For laughed. Chen, you're not jealous, are you? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. I'm going home. Chen Zhao tried to slow down when he got home. After all, his sports car was too fast when he came. The tires were all worn out. Even the slightest step on the brakes would cause the car to skid. Chen Zhao didn't want his sports car to be damaged. Otherwise, it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair. However, when he drove out of the city, Chen Zhao felt another car following him. There weren't many cars on this road, and Chen Zhao was driving so slowly. If the car was just passing by, it would have overtaken him already. Chen Zhao still didn't plan on speeding up. He just drove at a steady pace. When he reached the coastal road, the car behind finally overtook him and stopped in front of Chen Zhao's car. Chen Zhao got out of the car, and a few people also got out. One of them was a big boss. He was of medium height and had a big belly. He held a cigar in his hand and wore an expensive suit. However, it still couldn't hide his nouveau riche aura. The fat man swaggered over to Chen Zhao. There were two fully armed bodyguards beside him. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes at the fat man. He had the same aura as Moscow Pool. No, more accurately, they were similar. After all, Moscow Proust was rather elegant and handsome. In ancient times, he would definitely be an elegant young master. As for the fatty in front of him, he would be a nouveau riche in any era. Of course, it was also possible that he was faking it. Mister, how should I address you? The fatty asked. Do we know each other? I didn't know you before, but it's not too late to get to know you now. The fatty's attitude was quite arrogant. I'm Lila Gavich, the boss of Bell Chemicals. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Lila Gavich. I just want to see what kind of person can save my enemy, Lila Gavich said. I'm a doctor. Lila Gitch waved the hand with the cigar in it. No, ordinary doctors can't do that. I personally shattered Nulong Kirik's soul. Although Moscow Pool used the soul-locking nail to temporarily stabilize Nulong Kirik's soul, he still couldn't wake him up. As time passed, Nulong Kirik's soul would dissipate sooner or later. But you managed to restore Nulong Kirik's soul. So you aren't an ordinary doctor. You must be a spiritualist, right? And then, are you going to take revenge on me for interfering? Haha. No, of course not. He stood before Chen Zhao and patted his shoulder. I'm not that stingy. You're not Moscow Pearl's man. I just admire you. How about it? Come work for me. I can pay you well. Chen Zhao looked at Lila Gavich with a smile. Mr. Lila, do you know that I'm very rich? I think I should be richer than you were before. Lila Gavich froze. How much money do you have? My total assets should be more than $5 billion. Lila Gavich's expression suddenly turned strange. He realized that using a lot of money to bribe Chen Zhao seemed to be completely useless. Unless he gave all his assets to Chen Zhao. Never mind. Goodbye. Lila Gavich turned around awkwardly and left decisively. Mr. Lila, I want to know, did you send the two killers in the hospital? Lila Gavich looked back at Chen Zhao and nodded. Yes. Do you want to interfere? No, just satisfy my curiosity. Oh, that female doctor is my sister-in-law. I hope you won't hurt her accidentally. Of course, Lila Gavich replied. Lila Gavich replied. My battle with Moscow Pearl will not involve ordinary people. What about the Daipa farm poisoning incident? You think they're ordinary people? Lila Gavich asked, unconcerned. Chen Zhao was stunned. It seemed that this was more complicated than he'd imagined. However, he didn't know what kind of grudge Lila Gavich and Moscow Pool had. Neither of them were ordinary people. They both had a similar aura. But Chen Zhao still couldn't tell where they came from. Oh, are you interested in doing business with me? No, I'm not interested in your grudges, Chen Zhao rejected directly. I'm not interested. Lila Gavich said that he wanted to do business with him. But Chen Zhao had already done business with him. Thus, he had to be on the opposite side of Moscow Pool. The guy didn't have any good intentions. Plus, Chen Zhao wouldn't easily get involved in unfamiliar industries. What a pity. Lila Gavich's face was filled with disappointment. This time he really didn't look back. Chief, are we just going to let that Asian go like this? Lila Gavich's subordinates found it strange. Since when was Lila Gavich so nice? Even if Chen Zhao was a spiritualist, it shouldn't be enough to make Lila Gavich retreat, right? Plus, it wasn't like they hadn't fought spiritualists before. Most spiritualists could be killed with one bullet. Since that guy didn't panic at all when facing so many of us, he probably has some trump card, Lila Gavich said seriously. Our main target right now is Moscow Pool. I don't want to make unnecessary enemies. Moscow Pool and his people are our biggest enemies, Lila Gavich said seriously. After a moment of silence he asked, by the way, have you found the entrance? Chapter 1554. Daira Farm must be in that area, Lila Gavich's subordinate said with certainty. Lila Gavich's men said with certainty. Daipa Farm isn't big, it shouldn't be hard to find. Not hard. Our people can't even enter Daira Farm now. You think it's easy? Chief, we can't go on the ground, but we can fly in helicopters. Can they shoot our helicopters down from the sky? Lila Gavich's eyes brightened. That's right. Rent a few more helicopters. Just name the price. We just need to find them. Chief, that guy is accusing you. The trial will start in 3 days. Meskopil wants to stall me with this? Dream on. Prepare yourselves for the next few days. Once we find the entrance, we'll charge in. If Meskopil and his tribesmen want to start an all-out war, then bring it on. We're not a bunch of white dogs. Lila Gavich's face was ferocious. His eyes were deep and serious. He was tough, but he knew that a war between the two races wouldn't benefit either side. He knew this very well, and so did Moscow Priest. Just like before, when he had blocked Chen Zhao's way with an arrogant attitude. Actually, he had come to test Chen Zhao's attitude. After confirming that Chen Zhao wasn't related to Mason, and that Chen Zhao wasn't a nobody that could be bullied, he displayed a carefree attitude. Lila Gavich wasn't an idiot. He knew how to judge the situation. Mason returned to Daira Farm. The seemingly peaceful farm was actually filled with traps and sentries. Mason got out of the car. 2 people walked out of the house, both fully armed. One of them was holding a bow, and was as tall and slender as Moscow Pule. Chief. Yes, let's talk inside, Mason said. Mason wasn't in a good mood. His expression was even more serious. There were more than 10 people in the living room. Some were standing, some were sitting, some were standing. There were men and women, young and old. Lila Gavich has already shed all pretense of cordiality, Mason said. It's been going on since we lost more than 30 people. One of the elders glanced at Mason and said with some dissatisfaction, You're still hoping to use human law to restrain him. Not using human laws? With the weapons in our hands? With bows and arrows? Or with the blood of our people? We are not afraid of death, as long as death has meaning. Mason sighed. My fellow countrymen, this is no longer the Middle Ages. All of you have your own families. Are you really going to start a war? It's not our choice. It's Lila Gavich and his fallen scum's choice. We don't want war, but we're not afraid of it, a tall man said. Now is not the time to talk about this. The war is coming. Moscow Pool looked at his clansmen. Lila Gavich has basically confirmed that the entrance to the cave is here. They will definitely investigate it in 3 days. 3 days. As long as we can hold on for 3 days, Lila Gavich won't be able to do anything. A few days ago, those depraved bastards have been wandering around the area. Mason frowned. Was there a conflict? No, they didn't enter our territory. Send all the underage children out of the farm. Send them to our land. No, I can already draw my parasite bow. I can fight, a boy said with a red face. I can help too, another girl said decisively. Children, I'm not joking. This is a real war. Mason said sternly. Mason said sternly, I'm not discussing this with you. This war has nothing to do with the children. The children were the future of their clan. No matter how the war ended, it had nothing to do with them. At this moment, the other tribesmen also felt Mason's attitude towards them. They vaguely realized that the situation was more serious than they had imagined. In fact, in the past 300 years, the two clans had fought many times. From individual fights to group conflicts, there were even fights between more than a dozen people. From individual fights to group conflicts, there were even fights between more than a dozen people. Mason wanted to send the children back to their land. This was no longer a conflict. It was a real war. No one objected to Mason's decision, except for the children at the scene. No one objected to Mason's decision, except for the children at the scene. In a Porsche dealership, two underage girls were sitting in a Porsche. Coward, Mason is a coward. He doesn't deserve to be our leader. Bader roared. Shut up. Bauer's expression was extremely dark. Just then, a sports car drove into the store. Their father, a Bracei, walked up enthusiastically like a businessman. Chen Zhao got out of the car and a Bracei walked up. Hello, Mr. Chen. How can I help you? Chen Zhao was an old customer of this store. He had bought both cars here, as well as the Porsche 918 he had given to the handsome boy. At the same time, the two cars were also taken care of and repaired here. Apart from buying cars, Chen Zhao spent tens of thousands of dollars here every month. This was why a Bracei was especially polite to him. I need to change my tires, Chen Zhao said. All right, I'll arrange for the repairman to come over and give your car a thorough inspection, Abraki said. Would you like coffee or tea? No need, Chen Zhao said. I'll just walk around your shop. Please help yourself. Abraki was obviously willing to let Chen Zhao walk around the shop. Perhaps Chen Zhao had his eyes on that car. He did plan to buy a car. The main reason was that his garage was too big, but there were too few cars. Therefore, Chen Zhao planned to put 2 or 3 more in to make up the numbers. Chen Zhao went to Bader and Bauer's car. He first walked around the car, then said to the 2 children sitting in the car, Gentlemen, is it convenient for me to try this car? What if I don't? Bader looked up at Chen Zhao, his tone rather unfriendly. Bauer tugged at Bader and then said to Chen Zhao, Sorry, sir. My brother is an idiot. Of course, beautiful lady, I can see that. Chen Zhao glanced at Bader. The kid was clearly in puberty. He was uncharacteristically rebellious toward everything. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Bader immediately jumped up. Kid, what did you say? Chapter 1555. Abraki came up and slapped Bader's head. Bader, shut up. After scolding Bader, Abraki turned to Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, I'm sorry. My son was too rude to you. Chen Zhao chuckled. What else could he do? Scold his son in front of his father? Although Bader was in his rebellious phase, he was still in awe of his father. Standing behind Abraki, he secretly clenched his fist for Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, what do you think of this car? It's not bad. I don't think I've seen it on the market, Chen Zhao said. This is a Porsche 917, 1960 commemorative edition. The entire design is the same as the 1960 version, but the engine is the latest model. Porsche only produced 3, and this is one of them. If no one buys it, it'll be sold to another store in 3 months. How much? Chen Zhao asked. $5,400,000. Abraki looked at Chen Zhao, his eyes shining. Can I bargain? Abraki rubbed his hands awkwardly and looked at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, this is a Porsche car. It doesn't belong to me. I don't have the right to decide the price. Fine. Help me with the procedures, and then I'll send you to my house. Abraki was overjoyed. He only earned a small amount from this car, but it was almost half of his monthly income. A few beautiful female employees surrounded Chen Zhao, serving him tea and water. One of them had helped Chen Zhao with the procedures when he bought a car. When she saw Chen Zhao, she didn't come over immediately. Instead, she went to the bathroom to touch up her makeup, and then ran over to greet Chen Zhao. Bader looked at Chen Zhao, who was surrounded by a group of beautiful women. He couldn't suppress the anger in his eyes. He was the young master of this store, but the employees here never treated him nicely. Yet an outsider received such attention here. It was said that women were easily jealous, but in fact men were no less jealous than women. After a while, a brockie walked over to Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, the tires are changed. Only the 2 back wheels were changed. The front ones are fine, so they don't need to be changed. Chen Zhao was a big client, but a brockie didn't dare to cheat him of his money. Losing a big customer for such a small amount of money was definitely the stupidest business. Someone like Chen Zhao could buy a $5 million sports car without even blinking. A brockie wouldn't kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. Under the greetings of the female employees, Chen Zhao drove away. But just as he reached the intersection, a figure suddenly rushed out. Chen Zhao slammed on the brakes and heard a scream from the front. Chen Zhao was sure that his car hadn't touched it. He was also sure that the person had jumped in front of his car on purpose. Chen Zhao got out of the car and walked to the front. He looked at Bao on the ground. Just then Bader rushed out from the side. "Kid, you." Bader grabbed Chen Zhao's collar. "My coat is a Baroness, $9,888. My shirt is a rabbit head, $3,888. I also have a team of lawyers under me that doesn't have any clients yet. My car is also equipped with a driving recorder." Chen Zhao looked calmly at the youth who was a head shorter than him. "Before you do anything, you have to confirm if your father is willing to pay the compensation." Bader wasn't old, but he was still scared by Chen Zhao. The so-called rebellious phase only happened to people close to you. Most youths felt that their families allowed them to be rebellious. That was why they vented their frustrations and unhappiness on their family members. But others wouldn't give in to them, such as Chen Zhao. "If you do anything, I can guarantee that you'll be sent to the juvenile detention center for half a year. You think I'm afraid of you?" Bader still looked aggressive, but his tone had softened. Clearly, he also realized that it wasn't a good idea to work with his sister to blackmail Chen Zhao. "Kid, you should learn to control your emotions." Chen Zhao patted Bader's cheek. Bader was so angry that his face turned red. He gritted his teeth and stared at Chen Zhao. "I'm going to kill you. Just because of that, I can let you stay in the juvenile detention center for half a year." Just then Bauer pulled Bader away and smiled sweetly. "Sir, I'm really sorry about what happened earlier. We actually just wanted to play a little joke with you." They didn't say the other half and blackmail Chen Zhao for some money. Their father had a sizable sports car shop, but they didn't have much pocket money. Their first impression of Chen Zhao was that he was rich. Secondly, they thought that Chen Zhao wouldn't mind spending some money to solve a small problem. Unfortunately, they were still too inexperienced. Just then, a sports car of the same model as Chen Zhao stopped beside the three. A tall, sexy woman wearing sunglasses alighted from the Porsche. "Mom." Bao'er's expression froze. The woman came before Chen Zhao. She looked at the furious Bader, and then at the panic-stricken Bao'er. She immediately guessed that her child had gotten into trouble again. "Sir, may I ask if my 2 children have offended you in any way?" "Nothing, just a small misunderstanding." Chen Zhao glanced at the 2 children, not planning to pursue the matter. After Chen Zhao left, Undine turned to look at the 2 kids. There was no anger on her face, but Bao'er and Bader could feel the frosty coldness from their mother. "I thought that even if I don't send you back to the clan, and keep you by your father's side, he'll still be able to discipline you." Undine's tone was extremely cold, and her face was emotionless. "But I was wrong. Your father can't control you at all." Their father, Brack, was just an ordinary person, an ordinary businessman. He didn't know how special his wife and 2 children were at all. "Looks like I have to send you back to the clan land." "No, no, Mom, don't send us back," Bao'er yelled. "If you send us there, we'll die. We'll definitely die. Once we go in, we'll need at least 3 years to come out. I don't want to spend our adolescence there." Undine's expression returned slightly. She also couldn't bear to send her children to the clan land. If they were sent there, it would mean that they wouldn't see each other again for at least 3 years. "Can you promise that you won't cause trouble again?" Yes, yes. I promise I won't cause any more trouble." Chapter 1556. Bader still cared about his dignity, but his sister Bao had completely become her mother's puppy. She would do whatever her mother wanted her to do. She would say whatever her mother wanted her to say. Bader was a bit of a male chauvinist. But Bader was actually more afraid of his mother than Bauer. Bauer had been obedient and clever since she was young. She always showed a sweet mouth to everyone. But Bader had been punished by his mother Undine since he was young. Undine was also having a headache now. If she didn't send the two little bastards to the clan's land, who would watch over them? Moscow Pearl had already ordered them to assemble. A war between the two clans could really break out. And as one of the guarantees of their clan's combat power, Undine couldn't hide at home to watch over the two little guys. But their father couldn't watch over them. Until now, Abrasai still thought that Bauer and Bader were just active and lively. He still didn't know what was so special about Bauer and Bader. In his eyes, they were just kids. Even if you stuffed a gun in their hands, they might not dare to pick it up. "Mother, take us to the farm," Bader suddenly said, looking up. "You shut up," Undine immediately reprimanded. That wasn't a child's game. It was the real charaba. Even Undine didn't dare to say that her side would definitely win. Not to mention that she had to bring the two brats along. But the two kids' eyes were shining, and they couldn't be stopped. No matter how strict Undine's tone was, it couldn't erase the light in their eyes. In the end, Undine still sighed. She knew that she had compromised. "Go and tell your father," Undine said coldly. Bauer and Bader went to their father's shop and told Abrasai that they were going on a trip with their mother. Abrasai thought that they were really going on a trip and repeatedly told them not to cause trouble for Undine. Undine brought the excited Bauer and Bader to the farm. Mason was having a discussion with a few elders of his tribe. When they saw the black-faced Undine come in with Bauer and Bader, everyone in the front hall was stunned. "Undine, why did you bring them here? Didn't I say that all the underage children in the tribe are to be sent to the land?" Mason questioned angrily. "Mr. Chief, since I've brought them here, I've already made preparations. If they die in battle, then it's their fate," Undine said indifferently, even if he valued Bader and Bauer's lives more than anyone else. But that was all she could say now. "Furthermore, I don't think it's a good thing to send the children to the clan's land. Flowers that have not experienced the wind and rain will not be able to support the clan's future," Undine said. Mason and the other old men were stunned for a moment before they fell silent. "Since you are here, take a seat," Mason said softly. Hoo. Just then, the sound of a helicopter came from outside. "Who's here?" Undine was puzzled. "No one is coming. It's that group of bastards' helicopters." Mason clenched his teeth and said, "Since today, they've been using helicopters to fly around our farm, trying to find out where the entrance is. Why don't they shoot down?" Undine's eyes were filled with anger. "They've been guarding against us, hovering a few hundred meters above the ground. How can we shoot them down?" A few hundred meters above the ground, only a sniper rifle could hit them. But the turbulence from the helicopter could deflect the bullets. Besides, there were many good archers in the tribe who used bows and crossbows, but not many who used guns. Of course, they were not stubborn people. They knew the power of guns. It was just that their tribe was born with great talent. He was gifted in using bows and crossbows. Almost every child could learn how to use a bow and crossbow in a short time. Undine walked out of the house and looked at the helicopter flying high in the sky. Her face was filled with anger. Although Undine was a woman, she was famous for her temper in the tribe. But now their nemesis was doing whatever it wanted above their heads. How could she tolerate it? Undine grabbed a machine gun out of nowhere and fired furiously at the sky. However, doing so would only allow him to vent a little. Weekend Shinjiao arrived at the headquarters of the association. Many people were gathered in the empty space. Klaus and the Lightning Team, Gaia, Little Grove and Elite Ruan Faxaban, Moore Raz Jalanash Giselle Moore and Alice. They were all going to explore the underground this time. Originally, Helis and Norma wanted to participate too, but their heat resistance was really not high enough. More accurately, their own magic made them very sensitive to high temperatures. They were even more sensitive than regular people. It wasn't just them. Many people in the association wanted to go underground too, but they couldn't reach the heat resistance standard, so they lost the chance. Both Qinzhao and West were firm on this matter. Those who couldn't reach the standard couldn't go. There was no room for negotiation. Underground exploration wasn't a joke. Even Chen Zhao wasn't completely confident that he could bring them all back safely. There was a huge risk involved in this matter. After all, they weren't facing demons, but nature, the most violent force in the world. Are all the participants here? Chen Zhao looked at everyone. Previously, he'd thought about giving everyone a uniform, but he still couldn't come up with a style that everyone was satisfied with. Unexpectedly, everyone's uniform was the same this time. I'll say the ugly words first, Chen Zhao said. Even I'm not confident this time. So if you're scared, you can leave now. Once you go underground, it'll be impossible to leave. President, don't worry, Klaus said. No one will leave. What a joke. If anyone left now, it'd be a huge embarrassment. Which of the people who signed up to participate wasn't proud and arrogant? How could they accept something like getting cold feet? Actually, Chen Zhao had made a lot of preparations. For example, he'd brought many resources. Then let's go. President, are we going to the Crypt Demon's Nest? No, Mirror Lake, Chen Zhao said. Mirror Lake? Why are we going there? President, did you leave something behind? No, Chen Zhao said. There's an underground river that leads deep underground. Everyone stared at Chen Zhao stunned. They didn't expect Mirror Lake to have an underground river. Chapter 1557. They arrived at Mirror Lake. Everyone felt a little sorry for the once beautiful villa that was now only a ruin of Mirror Lake. Of course, to Chen Zhao it was just a house. Even if it was destroyed 10 or 100 times, it would be fine as long as no one was hurt. The biggest value of Mirror Lake and the surrounding land wasn't the house. It was the natural scenery and some changes that had been made to the land. And the old turtle's internal alchemy that had sunk into the lake. Hey, are you really not going to consider buying accident insurance before we leave? Angelite's words drew everyone's angry glares. Angelite, do you want to die? Angelite, you better buy insurance first, or I won't be able to resist killing you. They all glared at Angelite with murderous expressions. Okay, stop messing around, Chen Zhao said. The underground river tunnel is over there. Is it okay for you to swim there? Angelite sprinted. He stepped on the water surface and dashed hundreds of meters away. He stood where he was. Chen Zhao flew over directly. When he was above Angelite, he looked at him in confusion. Angelite, how did you step on the water? President, my feet vibrate at a high frequency to increase the contact area, Angelite said. Chen Zhao looked at Angelite and realized that his legs had been moving at high speed. Just then, the others arrived one after another. Of course, apart from Chen Zhao, only Gaia and Jalanash could fly. However, they didn't choose to fly over. Instead, they chose to swim. People always said that magicians had poor stamina, but that wasn't the case. In fact, this was not the case. Most mages had much better stamina than ordinary people. Non-strengthening type spiritualists couldn't completely convert magic into stamina or strengthen their bodies. However, magic could still improve their bodies. Spiritualists were also much more resistant to damage than regular people. A grenade could cause fatal damage to a regular person, but it might not be fatal to a spiritualist. As for Klaus and the lightning team, they wouldn't be tired even if they swam 10 kilometers. Everyone arrived at the designated spot. I'll go down first, Chen Zhao said. You guys follow. You need to hold your breath for at least 3 minutes. Prepare yourselves. If anyone can't do it, just say it. I have a portable oxygen inhaler. In the end, no one asked for a portable oxygen inhaler. Chen Zhao dove into the water and into the entrance of the underground river. Compared to the difficulty of going up last time, going down was much smoother. After all, they were going with the flow. Chen Zhao was the first to go down, mainly to clear the obstacles. After all, this was the entrance to an underground river. Who knew what kind of things were sucked in every day? It could be a stone or a tree branch. Some of them were obstructed by the terrain and rocks. If the others were to follow the current and hit an obstacle at such a high speed, they would most likely be directly injured. Chen Zhao quickly cleared the obstacles along the way. The others also slid down and followed closely behind him. In less than 3 minutes, Chen Zhao's body lightened, and he fell uncontrollably. Putong! Chen Zhao charged into the underground lake. Behind him, Gaia fell into the water. Then the association members fell down one by one. When everyone emerged from the water, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. This place was not as dark as they had imagined before they set off, nor was it as scorching hot as they had imagined. At least within the range of this underground lake, everyone could still feel a trace of coolness. The surrounding rock walls seemed to contain some minerals. They were glowing weakly at the moment. However, the entire rock wall made the entire underground lake resplendent and gorgeous. There were some species in this lake that were completely different from those on land. Most of them had no vision, but they had extremely powerful senses of smell and perception. Last time, Chen Zhao had killed many of them. Now there were no threatening creatures in the entire lake. From this, it could be seen that these species grew very slowly. They needed sufficient time to develop. It could be more than 10 years, or it could be decades or even longer. Don't be careless, Chen Zhao reminded. There are some dangerous creatures in the water. In fact, everyone's area was within Chen Zhao's surveillance range. If there was really danger, Chen Zhao would be the first to react. While they'd been in the water, some larger creatures had indeed approached. However, they'd all been scared away by Gaia's dragon aura. Even if Gaia didn't transform, she still had her dragon aura. The more sensitive a creature was, the more sensitive they would be to this aura. Let's go to the shore first, Chen Zhao said. When they reached the shore, they realized that there were many skeletons here. What happened here? Last time I was here, I killed many creatures in this lake, Chen Zhao said as he poured out the water in the helmet. This helmet had been developed by Jiaolik. Although the main body of the helmet was made of metal, it was a metal that didn't conduct heat. It had very good heat insulation. The helmet's visor was dark glass. Apart from sniper rifles, normal guns couldn't penetrate it. Together with the dragon scale armor, it looked like a single soldier battle armor in sci-fi movies. Of course, this set of equipment was worn by Chen Zhao, Klaus, and the Lightning team. Apart from magic resistance, the dragon scale armor also had strong resistance against attacks, and was not easily damaged. Traditional spiritualists like Jalanash, on the other hand, were more casual in their outfits. They were wearing magic dragon scale armor, which would not increase the weight of their bodies, nor would it affect their spellcasting. Gaia didn't need any equipment at all. She could jump into the lava directly. Chen Zhao also put on the dragon scale armor, because it looked really cool. The only thing that made Chen Zhao unhappy was that he'd wanted to add a cloak. In the end, Ruan Faxben, Dongye Tianxi, and Jinkura all rejected Chen Zhao's suggestion. They said that a cloak wouldn't increase one's combat ability at all. Instead, it would be a burden, especially the long cloak that Chen Zhao had requested, one that dragged on the ground. It was superfluous. Chen Zhao was very unhappy. However, seeing that they designed the dragon scale armor so cool, Chen Zhao could reluctantly forgive them. Chen, where should we go now? Gaia turned to look at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao froze. He looked at the tunnels on the wall nearby. They seemed different from what he remembered. Chapter 1558. Although the movement of the tectonic plates under the ground was very active, however, they should still be deep within the Earth's crust. The thickness of the Earth's crust was less than 20 kilometers, but it was already very thick for humans. Of course, there were also places to eat. Chen Zhao wasn't sure if they were at the boundary between the thin layers of the Earth's crust. If it was at the boundary of the thin crust, then the crustal activity here would be very active. It was like a flowing water source. Perhaps in a day, it would change the landscape. Chen Zhao remembered that he had discovered a lava pool in this area last time. Chen Zhao became more and more suspicious. Could this be an active continent? If that was the case, perhaps a small earthquake would bring about a disaster. Of course, since they were here to explore, everyone must be mentally prepared. Just pick one. This one, Chen Zhao said casually. Chen Zhao lifted his foot and was about to walk into the chosen tunnel when Gaia said, "I'll walk in front." "Oh, then you take the lead." They were here for the trial anyway. If Chen Zhao took the lead, it would be meaningless. But since Chen Zhao didn't want to take the lead, he would take the tail. Gaia led the way, while Chen Zhao protected the back. But Gaia had just walked into the chosen tunnel, Suddenly something red flashed by. Before Gaia could react, he was sent flying. It was a gigantic arachne. Chen Zhao was already quite familiar with the arachne. This arachne's main body was only 4 to 5 meters long, but its limbs were over 25 meters long. There was also a group of ordinary arachne following behind this big arachne. Prepare for battle. Gaia stood up. She looked energetic and uninjured. Chen Zhao still stood at the back, not planning to attack. These spider demons are great food, Chen Zhao reminded. Their flesh contains a substance that can strengthen magic in body. I call this substance earth essence. Normal earth essence is white. If the content is higher, it'll be dark yellow or bright yellow. The best is gold. Don't waste it. Ruan Faxi was beside Chen Zhao. He didn't attack either. In fact, he took this opportunity to come here, to look for some connecting materials that could not be found on the surface. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Ruan's interest was piqued. No matter how intense the battle was, Ruan Faxi would pick up a severed arachne limb and dig out a piece of tender flesh. He sniffed and immediately smelled the aroma of crab meat. But it was even more fragrant. Ruan Faxbin licked it again. Although it hadn't been cooked, it was already in the palate. Ordinary arachne possessed very little earth essence. It was very rare. Ruan Faxi tried several times and used various alchemy techniques, but he couldn't extract it. Give it to me. I'll teach you how to extract it. Chen Zhao was an expert in this. After all, he was the first person in the association to know and come into contact with the essence of the earth. Chen Zhao sent his immortal power into the spider's broken limb, destroying its structure. Then he took it back. The earth essence in the arachne's flesh came out along with it. Chen Zhao had used magic power before, but now it was immortal power. However, the principle didn't change, and neither did the results. It was just that there was too little earth essence in a severed limb like this. It might not even be 1 gram. Chen Zhao could probably only extract about 5 grams of earth essence from an entire arachne. Gaia, Klaus, and the lightning team will handle the battle at the front, Chen Zhao called. Everyone else, come over and extract the earth essence together. But we have to separate the quality of the earth essence. Don't let low-level earth essence mix with high-level earth essence. It'll affect the quality. Leader, we found it. We found the entrance. Lila Gavich was overjoyed. Everyone move out. Those who are underage shouldn't come. On this point, Lila Gavich and Mesko Pryor were surprisingly in agreement. They looked like big capitalists on the surface, but they actually had their own races behind them. Even if it concerned the future of the two races, he didn't want to bet on the future. No matter which race it was, children were the hope of the future. Lila Gavich appeared to be carefree, and even looked like a mafia boss, but that was just his disguise. The future of the Dark Elves depends on this operation. Elves had appeared in many European mythologies. According to legends, elves were handsome, free, elegant, and had long lives. They were a race that lived with nature, and were good at using bows and arrows. In these legends, there was always a name that wasn't so beautiful, Dark Elves. If elves were a collection of all good things, then Dark Elves were a collection of all evil. Dark Elves were always accompanied by derogatory terms like evil, darkness, and depravity. However, this wasn't the case. The only difference between Dark Elves and White Elves was their race. It was like the difference in skin color among humans. Of course, racial discrimination had always existed among the elves. The war between the White Elves and Dark Elves had lasted for 3,000 years. Since ancient times, the two races had been incompatible like fire and water. There had been a short period of peace, but not long after, war would break out again. In fact, elves didn't just consist of Dark Elves and White Elves. There were also some elves from other branches. For example, there were forest elves, sea elves, and wilderness elves. However, these three were already quite rare. Even if there were, they were probably hidden in human society. Even the mainstream Dark Elves and White Elves didn't have any news about them. Lila Gavich brought his people to the outskirts of Daipa Farm. However, before they could step into the farm, the owner stopped them. Mesko Pool couldn't hide his anger as he saw Lila Gavich get out of the car. Bastard, what are you doing at my farm? Lila Gavik's eyes flashed with anger at Mesko Pool's insulting words. Even though white elves had called dark elves this way for thousands of years, every time Lila Gavik heard it, he would still be furious. However, Lila Gavik remained calm and had a smile on her face. Of course I'm here to play. What am I not welcome? Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1559. Here to play. He brought the entire Dark Elf tribe here to play? Mosko glanced at the fleet of over 50 black MPVs behind Lila Gavik. Each car could carry at least 8 people. In other words, there were over 400 people in these 50 cars. Lila Gavik had really brought his entire tribe. The tribesmen behind Mosko had already surrounded him. Everyone was ready for battle. Some no longer concealed their weapons. Regardless of whether it was a crossbow or a gun, both were already in his hands. But no one fired, because they knew that once they started fighting, it would be time for the war to start. Everyone was waiting for Mosko's orders. You brought so many people here to play. My farm doesn't welcome you. Lila Gavik took a deep puff of his cigar and spat it on Mosko's face. That isn't up to you. Just then, in another direction of the farm, there was a sudden loud noise, followed by a ball of fire rising into the sky. Mosko's expression changed drastically. He looked at Lila Gavik. You. Oh no. You fell for it. Mosko was furious. Attack. Lila Gavik suddenly moved and retreated. Mosko's expression was uncertain. He wanted to do it himself. But he had to bring people to reinforce the other side of the farm. It had to be said that Lila Gavik had played his hand beautifully. He appeared personally, and had his men drive over 10 cars to block the entrance of the farm. This made Mosko think that Lila Gavik was going to attack the farm from the front. In fact, the 50 or so cars were empty. Each car only had one driver. Leave 100 people behind. The rest follow me, Mosko Pearl said. Mosko led his men to reinforce the other side of the farm. But when they arrived, they found that the battle was already over. There were over 10 corpses on the ground. They were all Dark Elf corpses. What happened? Did they retreat? Mosko asked in shock. Patriarch, that's all they came. We've already annihilated all of them. Mosko's expression changed again. Damn it. He fell for it again. That old fox. Quick, send reinforcements to the front. Mason exclaimed. There were 100 clansmen left in front. And if the true main force of the Dark Elves was in front, then his clansmen would suffer disastrous losses. At this moment Undine said, Chief, what if this is another trap? Mason was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. What if this place was still an illusion? If the Dark Elves were to charge in this direction, it would be troublesome. No, he couldn't continue like this. If this went on, he and his clansmen would be too passive. Everyone gather at the big house. Macy said. Actually, the best way was not to take the initiative to intercept. The farm was so big, with an area of more than 10 square kilometers. If they were to block the leaks everywhere, they would be exhausted. With the cunning of that old fox, Lila Gavik, it was only a matter of time before he killed them with this trick. But in fact, this was a mistake that Mosko Priest had made. In fact, they were the defending side, so they didn't need to rush around. They could wait at ease and gather all their forces. They wouldn't be tricked by Lila Gavik. At this moment at the front of the farm, after Mason left with his men, Lila Gavik also launched an attack. The people in the 50 vehicles all came down. He had purposely created an illusion to make Mosko think that all the cars were empty. In fact, it was just a diversion tactic. His real goal was to take out the white elves in front of him. But at this moment, a loud horn sounded from the center of the farm. The white elves who were fighting fiercely with the dark elves at the front heard the horn and started to retreat. Lila Gavik was a little disappointed, but he couldn't do anything if the white elves wanted to retreat. Chief, what do we do now? How many did we lose? Including the 15 that pretended to attack from the back and the crossfire just now, 28 died. What about them? They left around 40 bodies. That's a big loss, Lila Gavik said with a pained expression. Although they had used a trick this time to let the Dark Elves gain a little advantage, they also lost people. However, they had also lost people. so it was hard to say who had taken advantage of the situation. "Spread out and enter," Lila Gavich ordered. "Chief, aren't we going in together?" one of his men asked. "Idiot, there are countless mines buried along the road. Going in head-on is suicide. They probably have heavy weapons," Lila Gavich said. Actually, there was another advantage of spreading out. They could avoid a war of attrition. Both the Dark Elves and the White Elves didn't want to fight a war of attrition. Lila Gavich and his men weren't here to fight to the death with the White Elves. They were here to enter the entrance to the crypt. The farm was filled with sorghum and corn. It was big enough to hide a person. The Dark Elves started to spread out to the fields and moved towards the entrance of the crypt. There were also White Elves hiding in the fields. Soon a fight broke out in the fields. Lila Gavich walked towards the center of the farm from the main road. Thud! Lila Gavich suddenly felt like he had stepped on something. His reaction was extremely fast. It wasn't the reaction of a fat man at all. Lila Gavich dodged to the side. An explosion instantly engulfed him. But when the flames of the explosion dissipated, Lila Gavich continued forward unscathed. Boom, boom, boom. Who knew how many mines he had stepped on along the way? Lila Gavich wasn't hurt at all. That bastard Moscow Prowl, how many mines did he plant here? Lila Gavich cursed to himself. When this war is over, this farm will probably be destroyed. After all, there were hundreds of mines buried in the farm. If his men or children stepped on them, they would be in deep trouble. When he reached the end of the road, Moscow Pryor stood in front of Lila Gavich. "Bastard, where are you going?" Lila Gavich's face twitched. He took a deep puff from his cigar. "What a hateful bastard. Can't you let me pass more easily?" "Your body can pass." Chapter 1560. With a flick of his right hand, Mescal shot a dagger at Lila Gavich. Asterisk sway asterisk meng asterisk xiao yin asterisk com. Lila Gavich took a step back, but he was too slow. The end of the cigar in his mouth had been cut off. Lila Gavich looked even more displeased. He increased his strength and flicked his finger. Mescal shot out another dagger and cut off another half of the cigar in the air. The dagger didn't change its direction. It still shot at Lila Gavich. The moment it was about to hit Lila Gavich, Lilagovich, on the other hand, seemed to be transparent. The dagger passed through his head unscathed. It wasn't the first time Mescal and Lila Gavich had fought. He knew Lila Gavich's ability very well. Shadow. That was the ability of the Dark Elves. But it wasn't innate. Only the High Dark Elves could awaken it. Lila Gavich looked like a meatball. In fact, he was a High Dark Elf. The High Dark Elves could freely switch between reality and shadow. Be it physical or magical attacks, he could easily dodge them. Of course, this trick wasn't invincible. The High Dark Elves couldn't hide in the shadow forever. With Lila Gavich's current strength, he could hide in the shadow for 3 seconds. But for Lila Gavich, 3 seconds was enough to change the situation. Mescal shot 3 daggers in a row. This time Lila Gavich had to hide. It was as if Macy Cole had countless daggers on him. No one knew where he hid the daggers, but he kept shooting them at Lila Gavich. Suddenly Lila Gavich lifted his clothes. Mescal looked up. He saw that Lila Gavich's clothes were full of grenades. Mescal's expression changed, and he quickly retreated. But at this time, Lila Gavich had already taken off his coat and thrown it at Mescal. Mace Keller moved even faster. He pointed at the jacket that was full of grenades. A white light shot out from Mescal's finger and instantly enveloped the coat. Under Mescal's control, the coat suddenly rose into the air. Bang! It wasn't the sound of grenades exploding. Those weren't grenades at all, but smoke bombs. Oh no! Mason Koppel groaned inwardly. He had been tricked again. That damned old fox. The smoke bomb instantly enveloped the area. Hee hee. Lila Gavich laughed proudly. But at this time, Mescal could no longer see Lilich. Ouch! Lilich suddenly cried out in pain and reached out his hand. Liligewix was surprised to find it was a little girl. Then a roar came from the fog. Let go of bow air. Lila Gavich grabbed at the thick fog with his other hand, and Bader was also caught in his hand. This is an adult's game. Kids get lost. Although Lila Gavich and the White Elves were mortal enemies, however, he still had a moral bottom line in his heart. Lilajevic threw the two kids out of the thick fog. Lilajevic had no intention of fighting. His real goal was not to fight to the death with the white elves. He planned to enter the entrance of the crypt. These smoke bombs were not ordinary smoke bombs, but special magic smoke bombs. These magic smoke bombs could quickly spread around in a very short time. Soon, half of the farm was shrouded in the thick fog released by the smoke bombs, with the center of the farm as the origin point. Lilajevic walked in the direction of the entrance of the crypt. At this time, Maskell could not find Lilajevic at all. He could not even tell where he was going. Lilajevic was quite pleased with himself. This time, he had schemed against Maskell and played him around. It was a rare victory, but at this time a chill approached. Lilajevic stopped in his tracks and caught an arrow between his fingers. Lilajevic saw Bauer's figure flash in the thick smoke. At this moment, Bader launched another sneak attack. However, he was facing Lilajevic, a high dark elf. Even if he didn't use the shadow element, he had absolute power under his bloated appearance. Lilajevic clenched his left hand, and Bader's fist was caught by him. "Little guy, if you don't get lost, I won't go easy on you." However, Bader responded with a kick to Lilajevic's crotch. "Damn fatty, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Lilajevic suddenly pulled Bader. Bader screamed as an arrow hit him in the shoulder. "Bauer, you shot me." Sorry. Bauer apologized in the thick smoke. Lilajevic snickered. These two little fellows posed no threat to him at all. However, the game ended here. Lilajevic threw Bader aside and continued to walk toward the entrance of the crypt. Soon Lilajevic found the entrance. "Uffed." Lilajevic laughed strangely again. Maskell had planted many mines at the entrance. However, this mine was no threat to him. Suddenly Lilajevic frowned as Bader attacked again. However, he did not know that there were a large number of mines buried here. Lilajevic hesitated for a moment, then pulled Bader over and threw him into the entrance of the crypt. How could that idiot Maskell let two miners participate in this war? You killed Bader. I'll kill you." Bauer, who was hiding nearby, saw that Bader was thrown into the entrance of the crypt. She immediately shouted and rushed toward Lilajevic. At the same time, she shot 3 arrows in a row, but they did not hit Lilajevic. She had stepped on a mine herself. Lilajevic gritted his teeth. "Fuck, I was an intruder, but now I've become a babysitter. That idiot." Lilajevic used the same trick again and threw Bauer into the entrance of the crypt. At this time, the thick smoke began to dissipate. Lilajevic took out a black horn and blew it. Woo! Maskell's expression changed. This was the signal for the dark elves to retreat. Had Lilajevic found the entrance? Maskell rushed to the entrance and saw Lilajevic standing there. "Are you here to see me off, Maskell?" Lilajevic grinned at Maskell. Chapter 1561. Mosko's face darkened. He could no longer stop Lilajevic now. Lilajevic was just too cunning. He had thought that Lilajevic would fight him head-on, but it turned out that Lilajevic had no intention of doing so. He had been trying to avoid an all-out war. Now Lilajevic had one foot in the entrance, but at this moment a frost arrow shot over. Lilajevic dodged it with a shadow, but the frost arrow exploded in an instant. The cold air it released turned into an ice wall, blocking the entrance. At that moment, Mosko Pool and Lilajevic's expressions became very interesting. Mosko had thought that he had lost. Lilajevic had thought that he had won too, but the result had been reversed. The entrance was sealed in ice. Most importantly, Lilajevic had no choice but to retreat. This was the center of the farm. The dark elves had already retreated after hearing Lilajevic's horn. Now there were only white elves around. Seeing Undine walk out, Lilajevic's expression became even more interesting. "Hi Undine, I'm so happy to see you. Fatty, how do you want to die?" Undine asked coldly. If it was just Mosko and Undine, Lilajevic would not be afraid. Even if he could not win, he could still escape. But now, he definitely did not have to face just Mosko and Undine. "When are you going to divorce that useless man?" Lilajevic asked with a shy face. "You're still talking nonsense when you're about to die." "I'm babbling nonsense? I know you've been living apart for a year." Lilajevic smiled. "Oh, I saw your 2 kids just now. They're called Bauer and Bader, right? Where are they now? I accidentally threw them into the entrance of the crypt. By the way, don't worry, I left a mark on them. Now it was Undine and Mosco's turn to change. You damned fat pig. Undine roared angrily. What an affectionate title. Lila Gevich seemed to enjoy the affectionate title. Undine, don't open the ice seal. Mason looked at Undine. Lila Gevich smiled but said nothing. Mason became even more anxious when he saw Undine's hesitation. Undine, do you want our plan to fail? And I've told you before, don't bring children to the battlefield. Mason exclaimed excitedly. Lila Gevich knew her old lover too well. The more impatient Mason was, the more Undine would run in the opposite direction. Undine looked at Lila Gevich and said coldly, They are your children. If they die in there, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. Lila Gevich's expression became even more interesting. He opened his mouth for a long time, but no sound came out. After saying that, Undine pointed her finger, and the ice wall instantly cracked before collapsing. Instead, Lila Gage jumped into the entrance to the crypt. Lila Gevich kept slipping down, her mind a mess. No wonder they could find me in the thick smoke. Lila Gage muttered to himself. They have dark elf blood. Outside the entrance, Mason glared at Undine angrily. Before he could speak, Undine sprinted and jumped into the crypt. Mason's expression changed. After a moment of hesitation, he still jumped in. Since Lila Gage had already entered the crypt, he couldn't fall behind. The battle ended. Is anyone hurt? Raz, Chen Zhao said. You're in charge of checking them. If they're injured, treat them. It was a good battle. They'd killed hundreds of spider demons, including a big one. There was a big bottle of the most common earth essence, about 2 liters. There was a small bottle of the more advanced earth essence, less than 100 grams. There was also a small bottle of the best golden earth essence, about the same amount as the advanced ones. The main thing was that the big spider was more than the normal ones, and the quality was high too. Everyone had worked together to kill the big spider, but Gaia's contribution was the most. No one could deny this. However, this battle definitely wouldn't be easy. This was only the first battle, but it had already made everyone feel pressured. They continued going deeper. Most of the time, they needed a light source to explore the way in the tunnel. However, they didn't need to bring their own light source. Alice, Jalanash, and Ruan Faxben all had a spell that could create a stable light source. Even Morez knew this little spell. Suddenly the ground shook. A crack appeared under everyone's feet. Oh no! Chen Zhao suddenly sped up and grabbed Ruan Faxben, who was hanging in the air. Ruan Faxben was also frightened at this moment. This was because beneath his feet was a pool of magma. The sudden earthquake had torn the passageway apart, exposing the magma river below. Thankfully the crack wasn't big. They could jump over it. However, this earthquake still served as a reminder to everyone. The danger they faced wasn't just from the underground creatures. There was also the power of the earth. This was the biggest threat. Even Chen Zhao didn't dare to say that he could protect them completely. Chen Zhao still walked at the back. This was a good position. He could observe everyone in front. But the second earthquake came again. It was even stronger than the first. Chen Zhao saw that the rock layer above the tunnel seemed to be falling. Fuck! Without thinking, Chen Zhao charged forward. He pushed up with his arms and lifted the huge rock layer up. However, the force of the fall was far beyond his imagination. No. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. Chen Zhao immediately used his ultimate move. Instantly, Chen Zhao's strength increased several times. Chen. Gaia looked back. Go over. Chen Zhao still felt the pressure. The weight of the rocks connected to it was probably 1,000,000 tons. Right now, Chen Zhao was barely hanging on. He was relying on the friction between the rocks and the ground to barely hold on. Hurry, I can't hold on anymore. Chen Zhao roared. Chen Zhao's veins were bulging. He didn't know how long it had been since he'd been so tired. Of course, as long as they all went over, Chen Zhao could let go. No one dared to delay. They all ran forward with all their might. The more they dawdled, the more pressure Chen Zhao felt. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1562. Chen Zhao wasn't the first to collapse. It was the ground under Chen Zhao's feet. A huge force poured into the ground that Chen Zhao's feet were supporting him. The ground began to crack, and then completely collapsed. On top of that, there was a huge pressure on Chen Zhao's head. In an instant, Chen Zhao was pressed down. He couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Fortunately, the toughness of his body wasn't enough to crush Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's body fell into the lava. At the same time, there were rocks as big as small mountains above him. Thankfully, the weight of the rock wasn't completely on Chen Zhao. After falling into the lava, the immortal power in his body became even more active and covered his body. Chen Zhao started destroying the rocks on his body. After more than 10 minutes of effort, Chen Zhao finally crawled out from under the rock. The dragon scale armor on his body was still intact, and his helmet was not damaged. Chen Zhao poured the lava out of the armor. Chen Zhao looked around. There was a river of lava around him. Chen Zhao flew above the lava river and moved along it. Some places were blocked by the terrain, so Chen Zhao had to jump into the lava river again and walk through it. But overall, the road was quite spacious. Chen Zhao arrived at the lava lake. It was the one where he had met the phoenix. Even though he was flying above the lava lake, he could still feel the scorching heat waves. But now, even if lava was smeared on his face, it wouldn't hurt him at all. Not to mention that it was just a heat wave. However, if he soaked in lava, it would still consume a lot of immortal energy. Therefore, Chen Zhao didn't want to stay in the lava forever. Chen Zhao couldn't find any traces of the association members. He could only stroll around by himself. As for their current situation, Chen Zhao wasn't sure. Chen Zhao saw some caves around the lava lake. Some of the caves were spewing lava. Chen Zhao arrived at the entrance of one of the caves. He sensed that there were signs of life in the depths of the cave. It didn't matter if he was a member of the association or a monster from the underground. Chen Zhao's senses weren't as clear as the small world. However, this perception was similar to superhuman hearing. The immortal power greatly increased his bodily functions. From physical resistance to all kinds of resistances, to physical strength, vision, hearing, and reaction time were all improved. Chen Zhao really suspected that if he continued to evolve, he would become like Superman in the movies. In fact, many of Chen Zhao's abilities were almost superhuman. For example, if he used all things returned to one, his strength could reach 150,000 tons. If he used his full strength, he could even push the largest ship in the world. After walking for a few minutes, he suddenly heard footsteps in front of him. Chen Zhao immediately walked forward. Chen Zhao thought it was someone from the association. However, he didn't expect them to not be from the association. It was a girl. Bao, the daughter of the Porsche store owner? Chen Zhao was stunned. Bao also stared at the person who had suddenly appeared. This person wearing strange equipment. Because he was wearing a helmet, Bao didn't recognize him. While Bao was sizing him up, he was also sizing her up. The temperature here was at least 200 to 300 degrees. However, Bao seemed to be very used to the temperature here. There was a red mark on her forehead, and there were also some red lines on her exposed skin. Bao was holding a bough made from the branches of a mistletoe tree. He stared at Chen Zhao warily. "Who are you? Why are you here?" "I should be asking you that," Chen Zhao said. "Who are you? Why can you appear here without wearing a protective suit?" "A spiritualist?" She didn't seem to have any magical aura. Bao didn't answer Chen Zhao's question either. Instead, she raised her bow, pulled back the string, and knocked an arrow at Chen Zhao. "Tell me, who are you?" Suddenly, Bao's bowstring loosened without any warning. Chen Zhao was stunned. This girl actually dared to attack him? But he soon realized that Bao's arrow was off by a lot. The arrow flew over Chen Zhao's head. When Chen Zhao turned around, he saw that it was a lizard covered in flames. The lizard was about 3 meters long. Its body was red with black spots. It looked like Abido's, but it was much smaller. At the moment, Abido's was already 9 meters long in his normal state. If he turned into a fire dragon, he would be around 12 meters long. Chen Zhao didn't think that he wouldn't notice the lizard, even with his strong senses. "I saved your life. Can you tell me who you are now?" Did that count as saving his life? Chen Zhao was speechless. Nevertheless, he still opened the visor of his helmet. "Hey, Little girl, we meet again. It's you. Seeing Chen Zhao's face, Bauer immediately raised her bow. Why are you here? Are you with the dark elves too? Dark elves? What the hell? Were they the night elves in the city? I'm a researcher. Researcher? Bauer tilted her head and looked at Chen Zhao. What do you study? Geology. No wonder. Bauer's knowledge seemed to make her think that it was reasonable for a researcher to appear here. She didn't seem to notice Chen Zhao's armor. It was very abnormal. What's with your equipment? Heat-resistant suit, Chen Zhao said. Why aren't you afraid of high temperatures? Why should I tell you? Bauer said in annoyance. You better leave quickly. It's very dangerous here. I'm not afraid of danger, Chen Zhao said calmly. Scram. I won't protect you anymore. Bauer pretended to be fierce. Unfortunately, this didn't scare Chen Zhao. What if I don't leave? Chen Zhao asked nonchalantly. Bauer raised her bow again and pointed at him. Then I'll kill you. Are you scared? Yes. Then scram. I heard that this place is closer to hell. Will I go to hell faster after I die? Bauer glanced at Chen Zhao. Thinking that he was crazy, she turned and left. On the other hand, Chen Zhao shamelessly followed behind her. Bauer took a few steps and turned around dissatisfied. Why are you following me? Is this your home? What did you say? Bauer raised her bow again. Chen Zhao immediately raised his hands. I said that I need to go this way to leave. You can't leave the direction you came from. There's a lava lake there. Then why did you come from there? Because I came here first. I saw that it was a dead end, so I turned back. Chapter 1563. Bauer didn't believe him. She walked in the direction Chen Zhao had come from for a few minutes, and indeed saw a huge lava lake. No matter how much she didn't believe him, she could only believe him. After all, even if she possessed a special bloodline, it was impossible for her to cross the magma lake. Bauer and Bader's bloodline was very special. They were twins. They also had white elf and dark elf bloodlines. Of course, this also proved that white elves and dark elves were actually the same race. How did humans differentiate between species? Those that could mate and reproduce were the same species. For example, yellow, white, and black people could reproduce together and give birth to the next generation. So, no matter their skin color, they were actually the same species. Humans, monkeys, and chimpanzees couldn't reproduce. They were primates, but they weren't the same species. No matter how much white elves and dark elves looked down on each other and hated each other, it couldn't change this fact. Bauer and Bader's mother, Undine, had the ice bloodline, but they'd both awakened the fire bloodline. In this hot environment, they wouldn't be hurt. Instead, they'd become stronger and stronger. So Bauer was still wary of Chen Zhao. But it wasn't because she was afraid of him. It was because this was her home turf. Chen Zhao poked the red pattern on Bauer's arm with his finger. The red pattern looked quite beautiful. This was probably why Bauer wasn't afraid of the heat. Don't touch me, Bauer said fiercely. I'll kill you. But no matter how she pretended to be fierce, it was hard to scare people. Why did you come here? Chen Zhao asked curiously. None of your business. Bauer glared at him. Tell me about elves, and what's with the dark elves you mentioned just now? You don't need to know. Bauer rejected his question. Just then, 3 fire lizards appeared before them. One of them was bigger than the other 2. It was about 8 meters long, and had a muscular body. The fire lizard made Chen Zhao suspect that it might be related to the dragons. But they didn't have horns, and Chen Zhao didn't sense any dragon aura from them. Bauer was not afraid at all. You'd better stay away. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you later. No, I won't protect you at all. Bauer corrected herself. Your life and death have nothing to do with me anyway. Who said it doesn't matter? Think about it. I'm a rich man, and I'm a big customer of your father's Porsche store. As long as I'm alive, I can spend more in your father's store. Your father earns more money, and then you can have more pocket money. Am I right? Bauer was stunned for a moment. She seemed to be seriously considering this question. However, before she could wrap her head around it, the 3 fire lizards had already charged over. Bauer leaped high into the air. Her jump was at least 4 meters high. Her toes bounced off the rock wall and landed behind the salamander. Then, he pulled the bowstring in his hand to the fullest and released it. It accurately hit the head of a fire lizard. The piercing power of this arrow was extremely strong. Not only did it pierce through the fire salamander's head from behind, but it also stabbed into the rocks on the ground. The largest fire lizard charged straight at Chen Zhao. As soon as Chen Zhao released his aura, the biggest salamander immediately froze. Just then Baoer's help arrived. "Watch out!" Baoer yelled. She leaped onto the fire lizard's back, pulled out a dagger from her waist, and stabbed it heavily into the fire lizard's neck. The fire lizard struggled wildly, but Baoer was extremely agile. The moment she succeeded, she jumped to the side and shot 2 more arrows, both hitting the third fire lizard. In less than 2 minutes, she had killed all 3 fire lizards. The entire process was smooth and pleasing to the eye. Chen Zhao stepped over the fire lizard's corpse and pulled on Baoer's clothes. Her clothes were very loose, and she had a belt made of the same material around her waist. If it were normal clothes, they would probably spontaneously combust in such a hot environment. However, Baoer's clothes were still perfectly fine in such a high temperature. "What material are you made of? It's so hot." Baoer slapped Chen Zhao's hand away in disgust. "Why are you like this? Don't touch it." Chen Zhao wanted to tear off a piece and study it. However, the material was much tougher than he'd imagined. If Chen Zhao tore it off forcefully, Baoer's clothes would probably be torn off. "If you touch me again, I won't go easy on you." Baoer looked at Chen Zhao as if he was a pervert. Baoer didn't leave immediately. Instead, she started cutting off a piece of fire lizard meat. "Can this be eaten?" "Yes, but its meat is poisonous. Normal people will be poisoned if they eat it. Of course, it's not fatal." Baoer glanced at Chen Zhao. "But you don't have a choice now. If you don't want to die here, you better bring some." Chen Zhao pursed his lips. "It's poisonous? Forget it then." Chen Zhao didn't reject the meat of magical creatures. However, he'd always been stubborn. Chen Zhao wouldn't eat it even if it was slightly poisonous. Suddenly, Baoer raised her bow and pointed at the tunnel ahead. "Who is it? Come out." Vader jumped out from the tunnel ahead. "Baoer, it's you. How come you're here too?" Vader didn't expect to see Baoer here. "Vader, you made it easy for me to find you." Then Vader looked at Chen Zhao. "Baoer, who is he?" "The man who bought a car from Dad's shop last time," Baoer said. "Him? How come he's here?" "He's a geologist. He came here for research and happened to run into him." "Baoer, you're kidding, right? I've never heard of a geologist going into the Great Abyss." Vader was only an hour older than Baoer, but he was smarter than her. At least he could tell what was normal and what wasn't. Vader looked at Chen Zhao warily. "Who exactly are you?" Baoer glanced at Chen Zhao and said, "I knew something was wrong with him. He wasn't even afraid of the fire lizard. Looks like I was right." Chen Zhao pursed his lips. This girl really knew how to say things after the fact. "Fine," Chen Zhao said in a low voice, pretending to be mysterious. "Actually, I'm an underground human. My ancestors and I have always lived underground. This is our home. We occasionally go to the surface and hide among humans." Baoer and Vader were both dazed. Underground humans? Do underground humans really exist in sci-fi? Is there an underground world? Chapter 1564. The 2 kids really believed Chen Zhao's bullshit. But Chen Zhao couldn't stop complaining. Because the 2 of them, the so-called elves, did not come out of fantasy stories. It wasn't strange for him to talk about the underground world in science fiction. Chen Zhao didn't plan on letting them believe him at all. But they really believed him. Chen Zhao didn't know if he should call them stupid or naive. Chen Zhao was used to lying. He just said it casually, but they actually believed him. "You underground people." This was what they called Chen Zhao now. "Are there a lot of underground people? Where's your underground world? Can you take us there? First, tell me about you elves. Why are you here?" "It's not the dark elves. It's all them," Baoer complained. "They want to find the enlightenment water in the cave." "Water of enlightenment? What's that?" Chen Zhao asked, confused. "It's a treasure that can evolve the elven bloodline." "Baoer," Vader immediately reminded her. Vader was usually careless, but his mind was clear. "Where's the water of enlightenment?" Chen Zhao asked shamelessly. Even though he knew it was their secret, Chen Zhao still wanted to know. Just from the name, one could tell that the water of enlightenment was good stuff. Suddenly a chill came from behind. Chen Zhao raised his arm and grabbed it. It was an arrow, and not an ordinary one at that. The moment Chen Zhao grabbed it, a bone-chilling coldness exploded from the arrow. Half of Chen Zhao's shoulder was instantly frozen. Chen Zhao turned around and saw Undine walk out from the corner. "Mom!" Bader and Bao cried in surprise. Undine's expression was still cold. A cold aura surrounded her. Chen Zhao was surprised. These elves were really good at hiding their auras. As long as they weren't in his small world, he couldn't sense them at all. Undine looked at Chen Zhao coldly. "Sir, it's embarrassing to lie to two kids." Chen Zhao grinned. She seemed to have heard what he'd said to the two kids earlier. "So are you going to regain face for your children?" The ice on Chen Zhao's shoulder suddenly shattered. He stretched his arm. Undine's pupils suddenly shrank. To be honest, she didn't want to have a conflict with him here, because her attribute was destined to be restrained by the environment here. She had to use half of her strength to resist the heat. And Chen Zhao had hidden his strength very well. However, he was able to ignore his ice arrows and cold air, which meant that it would be very difficult for him to defeat him here. As for Bao and Bader, they were strengthened in this environment. However, they were still not strong enough. Moreover, they didn't have enough experience. It was too dangerous to fight someone like Chen Zhao. "Are you an enemy?" "Of course not," Chen Zhao said. "I have nothing to do with you." "Of course I have nothing to do with your enemies either." "Bader, Bauer, come here," Undine said. Bader and Bauer ran to Undine. They had thought that Undine was going to fight Chen Zhao, but Undine turned around and led them away. However, Chen Zhao shamelessly followed them. Undine raised her bow and pointed at Chen Zhao. "Sir, what do you mean?" "Nothing, I'm just lost," Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. "I have no obligation to lead the way." Undine's tone and attitude were still as unapproachable as before. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao was shameless. No matter what, he was determined to follow Undine. Whether she was willing to lead or not, Chen Zhao wasn't going to leave. "Then let's go our separate ways." Somewhat annoyed, Undine shot an arrow at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao still easily caught the arrow. This time his entire body was frozen. But in the blink of an eye, the ice on him shattered. Undine was even more annoyed. "What exactly do you want?" "Mom, should we fight him?" Bao and Bader were both warmongers. Especially in this environment. The scorching heat seemed to ignite their fighting spirit, and the blood in their bodies. Undine's eyes flickered. She was thinking about the chances of winning if the three of them fought Chen Zhao. But after thinking for a while, she quietly gave up on the idea. Judging from Chen Zhao's current abilities, even if they won, they might not be able to escape unscathed. Whether it was Bao or Bader, Undine didn't want to see either. "Let's go." In the end, Undine decided not to care about Chen Zhao following them. On the other hand, Chen Zhao walked beside Undine, as if they were familiar with each other. "What abilities do you elves have? Was the ice arrow you shot just now your ability?" Chen Zhao was a curious baby. He was always curious about the unknown. "I don't feel any magic from you. How do you control the power of the elements?" Annoyed, Undine ignored Chen Zhao's question. But Bao explained to Chen Zhao enthusiastically. "We elves are naturally close to the elements," Bauer said. "We don't control the elements. We communicate with them." "Bauer," Undine scolded. Bauer shrunk back and stuck out her tongue. "Close to the elements? Communicate with the elements?" Chen Zhao was even more curious. Should he catch an elf and study it? Just then, there was a sudden rumble in front of them. Was it an earthquake? Chen Zhao was confused. Undine suddenly jumped up. Bader followed closely behind. After jumping up, Bao immediately said to Chen Zhao, "The surrounding elements tell us that there's lava flowing in our direction." As they spoke, the tumbling red current was already rushing toward them. Chen Zhao immediately jumped up and grabbed the rock wall. At the same time, Chen Zhao felt Undine's gaze. In that instant, Undine seemed to want to attack. But she gave up on the idea in the end. Undine, Bao and Bader jumped around on the rock wall as they advanced. Even Chen Zhao couldn't be as precise as them at every landing point. Even if it was a protrusion, they could grasp it fully. However, Chen Zhao was just pretending. He would advance the same way they advanced. Undine had been observing Chen Zhao in secret. She was a bit confused about how Chen Zhao did it. Compared to them, Chen Zhao's movements were rougher. Normally, he would have fallen into the lava long ago. Chapter 1565. The four jumped left and right and finally landed on a platform. There was a tunnel in the rock mass behind the platform. When Chen Zhao landed on the platform, he realized that the tunnel was man-made. The entrance was very spacious, and it looked like a big canyon. The lava river below illuminated the place very brightly. Undine glanced at Chen Zhao. She was very confused by his actions. Chen Zhao's actions had violated the laws of physics many times. Undine could roughly tell that Chen Zhao was an enhancer spiritualist. But there were differences even among enhancers. For example, an elite. More accurately, he was also an enhancer. Chen Zhao was also recalling what Undine and her mother and daughter had done just now. Even though Chen Zhao's physique was much better than theirs, he still couldn't copy their actions. Their actions were all calculated by human kinematics and footholds like computers. Even if Chen Zhao imitated most of the movements and footholds, he was just copying a tiger and a cat. He could learn the surface but not the essence. Of course, this was an ability unique to elves. Chen Zhao wouldn't be discouraged, even if he couldn't learn it. What could he do about their racial talents? Suddenly, there was a sound from the tunnel. There was a living thing in the tunnel. Just then Chen Zhao pulled Bao violently. Before Bao could scold Chen Zhao, something flew past where she'd been standing. After missing its target, it flew more than 10 meters away. Then there was a huge sound. It was like the power of a grenade explosion. In the darkness of the tunnel, there was some red light. The red light was probably the eye of some creature. It's the Abyss Nest Maker. Undine's expression was serious. At the same time, she couldn't help but glance at Chen Zhao. Clearly, she was worried that Chen Zhao would hurt her son and daughter. But Chen Zhao's actions just now had won her trust. Help me protect Bader and Bao. I'll go deal with that Abyss Nest Maker. Go in peace. I'll take care of your daughter. Chen Zhao looked at Undine seriously. Angered, Undine snorted coldly. Don't think I don't know what you mean in the East. Actually, I didn't mean anything else. Don't think too highly of yourself. Just then the Abyss Nest Maker crawled out of the tunnel. It was a creature that looked like a spider. Of course, it was 10,000 times bigger than a spider. It was about 5 meters tall, and had 6 furry limbs. However, from its head to its tail, it was covered with red eyes. Let's just call them eyes. And there were probably hundreds of them. It had a round and bulging belly, a raised tail, and there was even a hole at the end of it. Its mouth opened like a flower petal. So ugly. Chen Zhao couldn't help but complain. Both Bader and Bao agreed with this. Undine's expression was somewhat solemn as she raised her wooden bow. But before she could fire an arrow, the Abyss Nest Builder swung its tail, and a red orb shot at her. Bang! Undine quickly dodged the explosion and fired the arrow at the abyssal hive. The arrow was about to hit the Abyssal Nest Builder. However, the Abyssal Nest Builder opened its mouth and spat out lava, which hit the arrow squarely. Undine cursed inwardly. Damn it! The Abyssal Nest Dwellers were the most troublesome underground creatures for the elves. Their reactions were very fast, and the eyes on their backs were all compound eyes. Their compound eyes could capture any attack. They were even sharper than the fastest human cameras. Undine leaped from the rock wall to the sky above the Abyssal Nest Builder. One had to admit that Undine's movements were very beautiful. Her fighting style was completely different from Chen Zhao's. When Chen Zhao attacked, most of the time, he was straightforward. However, the elf's fighting was like an art or a dance. Undine shot an arrow at the Abyssal Nest Builder with her head down and feet up. The Abyssal Nest Builder also bounced back, dodging Undine's arrow. At the same time, it hung on the wall. The Abyssal Nest Builder moved up and down the wall. Chen Zhao started shooting at Undine. He realized that the coldness around Undine was getting weaker and weaker. Undine's attacks weren't as frequent either. Thinking about it, Chen Zhao knew the problem Undine was facing. He secretly used needle threading. An invisible thread wrapped around one of the Abyssal Nest Builder's legs. Shocked, the abyssal nest builder tried to break free from the invisible thread. However, the tenacity of this thread far surpassed any metal. Undine's attack landed on the abyssal nest builder. The abyssal nest builder wanted to dodge, but one of its legs was tied up. It couldn't dodge Undine's attack no matter what. The arrow pierced through the abyssal nest builder's back. The abyssal nest builder's back was instantly frozen. Then, the other 5 limbs lost their grip too. It fell from the wall into the lava. Boom, 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 Undine panted, her eyes revealing a trace of doubt. What was going on? Her attack just now was just a probing attack. The abyssal nest builder couldn't be hit at all. But why was the abyssal hive hit? It didn't make sense. The abyssal nest builder could totally dodge it. Undine recalled the abyssal nest builder's movements. It seemed to pause for a moment. Undine looked at Chen Zhao. You attacked just now. What? Chen Zhao pretended not to know. Nothing. Undine didn't ask. She didn't sense or see Chen Zhao's movements. But she felt that Chen Zhao had definitely attacked. Otherwise, she wouldn't have won so easily. Undine led the way into the tunnel. She'd used up a lot of power just now. In this environment, it was very difficult for her to recover through the elements. The surrounding elements were too restless. It wasn't suitable for her to recover at all. Sir, since you're a member of our team, shouldn't you show your value? Undine's power was greatly reduced now, but she didn't want her son and daughter to fight. After all, everything here was very dangerous, so she turned her attention to Chen Zhao. Tell me about elves, Chen Zhao said. What do you want to know about us? Everything. I'm quite interested in you guys. Chen Zhao didn't hide his intentions at all. And what's the water of enlightenment? Agonades, Undine said. That's our real name. It means son of nature. Elves are what humans call us. It comes from movies, games, and novels. I think son of element is more suitable for you. Chapter 1566. Undine shrugged. Armendadir is the elemental sun in Elvish. The water of enlightenment is Armendadir's blood. Undine paused for a moment before continuing. However, Armand Didier is the symbol of depravity. He is sinister, cunning, evil, and bloodthirsty. The dark elves were tempted by Armand Didier and drank his blood, thus becoming depraved. Chen Zhao frowned. Undine's words seemed to contradict herself. You said that the water of enlightenment can make elves evolve. And then you said that Armendadir's blood is the water of enlightenment. Then you said that the dark elves drank Armendadir's blood and became depraved. So did the dark elves evolve or depraved? Chen Zhao raised his suspicions. Or maybe your ancestors were jealous of the dark elves. The dark elves evolved, but the other elves didn't. So they purposely divided and slandered the dark elves? Chen Zhao felt that this was possible. Wasn't this a classic case of envy, jealousy, and hatred? Of course it's not that simple, Undine said unhurriedly. At that time, there were no dark elves. At that time, the elves were still a whole. Avendadir disguised himself as a sage and came to the elf clan. He used our kindness and trust to trick the entire elf clan into drinking his blood. It wasn't just the dark elves who drank it, but the entire elf clan. Undine slowly said. Avendadir descended 3,000 years ago. At that time there were no dark elves. And then, later, some of them were tempted by Armendadir's blood and became his slaves. From then on, the elves split into the white elves and the dark elves. Under Armendadir's leadership, the dark elves started a war against the white elves. Who won in the end? Chen Zhao asked. Of course we won. Light triumphed over darkness, justice triumphed over evil, and Amanda Didier was sealed by us. Undine's tone was still cold, but there was a tinge of pride in her tone. Chen Zhao didn't agree with the so-called depravity. People's thoughts might change, but their personalities wouldn't. For example, the source of the depravity. He also had the ability to control others. But that was control, not depravity. Control and depravity were different. If there was really someone in the world who could make someone depraved, then that person could definitely rule the world. Take God for example. In any mythological system, God was the most powerful existence. But could God change a person's thinking? If God could change everyone's mind, that way, he could directly turn all the humans in the world into his believers. Then God would not need to establish a religion. Of course, Chen Zhao wouldn't argue with Undine. After all, this story had been passed down for 3,000 years. It was clearly impossible for Chen Zhao to overturn 3,000 years of history with his own knowledge. So this is where Armand Didier was sealed. Yes, the ancestor of the White Elves sealed Armand Didier here. The Dark Elves want to release Armandidir? The Dark Elves aren't stupid. If they release Amanda, they will only become his slaves again. The Dark Elves only want Amanda's blood, which is the water of enlightenment. I told you, I just want the water of enlightenment. I have no intention of releasing Amanda Deer, Lila Gavik said angrily. Do you think I'll believe you? Moskopoul stared coldly at Lila Gavik. His eyes were filled with distrust and hatred. He knew Lila Gavik too well, a cunning old fox. Just like his master, Amanda Deer, they were both sinister and dangerous. Releasing Amanda Deer won't do me any good. I won't believe you. Lila Gavik sneered at Moskopoul. You also want the water of enlightenment, right? You hypocrite. You keep saying that you're going to stop me. But ever since you met me, you've never really stopped me. Clearly you want the water of enlightenment too. It's better than falling into your hands, Moskopoul said calmly. Aren't you afraid of falling? Lila Gavi smiled strangely. I wonder if it would be interesting if a white elf like you, who thinks highly of yourself, and is proud of your bloodline, degenerates into a bastard like me. Do you think this is the first time we white elves have come here? Moskopoul sneered. Every generation, white elves will come here to extract the water of enlightenment. As the descendants of white elves, we won't be tainted by Amanda Deer's fallen will. Despicable. No wonder you white elves could awaken so many high-level bloodlines after so many generations. You've been hiding it all along. Lila Gavik was both angry and jealous. After all, the Dark Elves had spent hundreds of years just to find the entrance to the cave. Dark Elves didn't have a high-grade bloodline in every generation. For example, when Lila Gavik had taken over as the leader of the Dark Elves, he had only been an ordinary Dark Elf. The previous Dark Elven Patriarch was also a member of the Dark Elven race, with an ordinary bloodline. But the White Elves had always controlled this place. If they wanted to, they could come here at any time. Moreover, the White Elves had never lacked high-level bloodlines. Every generation had 3 or 4 high elves. Lila Gavik and the other Dark Elves did not understand why. They thought it was because their bloodlines were purer. Only now did they understand that it wasn't because of the so-called bloodline. It was because they had been embezzling. They were both watchers and thieves. They claimed that Amanda Deer's blood would corrupt the elves. But they themselves had never stopped using Armand Dill's blood. Was there anyone more shameless than them in this world? Lila Gavik had never believed that story either. Although the story was also spread among the Dark Elves, Lila Gavik believed that his will would not be tainted by the water of enlightenment. Lila Gavik looked at Moskopoul. A smile appeared on his face. Have you used the water of enlightenment before? Moskopoul looked at Lila Gavik. You know, the water of enlightenment can only be used once. It won't work the second time. I thought a piece of trash like you awakened a high-level bloodline with the water of enlightenment. You're not the only genius in this world. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1567. Suddenly, Lila Gage and Moskopoul stopped at the same time. In front of them was an empty field. Corpses of abyss nesters were everywhere. It seemed like a huge battle had taken place here. There were around 100 corpses. What's going on? Could it be Undine or the 2 children? Lila Gavich asked doubtfully. Moskopoul shook his head. These abyss nesters aren't easy to deal with. Their abilities are very effective against elves. There's no way the 3 of them killed so many of them. Who else could it be other than the 3 of them? Moskopoul and Lila Gavich discovered after a careful inspection that there was no sign of Messiah. There were many traces at the scene, some of which were obviously left by humans. There was also a magical aura at the scene. Spiritualist. Both of them came to the same conclusion. What's going on? Why is there a spiritualist here? Other than your own people, why did you let outsiders in? No, why would I let outsiders in? Moscow Pool stared at Lila Gage. Then why are there outsiders here? Aren't you an outsider? When Lila Gavik heard what Moscow said, he was so angry that he almost started a fight with him. Still, Lila Gavik endured it. Don't you have any clues? No, I don't even know how they got here. Really? Lila Gavik didn't trust Moscow prior at all. I don't have to explain anything to you. There are quite a lot of them. They should have left in this direction. Lila Gage kept staring at Moscow Pool, paying attention to his expression. Moscow Pool hesitated for a while. Let's go and take a look, he said. Are they here for the water of enlightenment too? Lila Gavich asked in a probing manner. Moscow's expression changed slightly. Lila Gavik asked again. Is Armendator's seal in that direction? Mason didn't say anything else and headed straight in that direction. Gaia, will something happen to the president? No, we're all fine. Do you think Chen is worse than you? Although these words were hurtful, it was the truth. All of them combined weren't Chen Zhao's match. Suddenly, everyone stopped in their tracks. A lava river was blocking their way. On the opposite side of the lava river, there were two closed stone doors. That's right. It was a man-made stone door. Why is there a stone door? Could this be the treasure the guild leader mentioned? But how do we cross this river? Not everyone could fly, and not everyone could jump over a lava river that was more than 20 meters wide. Gaia thought for a moment and said, I'll drive you there. With that, Gaia transformed into a fire dragon and carried half of them over. Then, they would turn around and pick up the other half. Everyone stood in front of the two stone doors. The stone gate was very big, about 50 meters tall. It was also very beautiful. There were many cryptic patterns carved on the stone door. This kind of craftsmanship was a huge amount of work, even in modern times. Moreover, looking at the traces of this stone door, it was obvious that it was not a product of this era. It was hard to imagine who the creator of this stone gate was. To be able to create such a stone door in such an underground place. How do we open it? Let me try. Gaia transformed back into a fire dragon. However, her 20-meter-long body seemed a little small in front of the two closed stone doors. Gaia used all her strength to hit the stone doors, but they didn't react at all. No, Gaia said, shaking her head. I can't open them with brute force. They were too heavy. The two stone doors weighed at least 1,000 tons. Gaia's strength was just a drop in the bucket for the two doors. Gaia, fly me up, Alice said. Ah, did you find something? The patterns on it should be some kind of magic circuit, Alice said. Because the stone doors were too tall and big, Alice couldn't see everything. Gaia carried Alice and flew to the top of the stone doors. Eris began to study the lines on it. I understand. Alice quickly understood. Can you open these two doors? No problem. They look huge, but they're actually not that complicated, Alice said. Alice said, the maker of these two stone doors isn't an expert in magic. Alice sounded quite proud. Of course, she did have the right to be proud. She might not be the most powerful in the association, but she was definitely the most knowledgeable in magic. And it covered a lot of areas. Alice returned to the ground. She looked around again. Finally, she pointed at the lava river not far away and said, Do you see the valve at the edge of the lava river? Open it. An elite stepped forward and opened the valve. The valve was a small mechanism, but it was not too complicated. After the valve was opened, the lava flowed into a ditch. Then it flowed along the ditch to the middle of the stone doors. The patterns on the stone doors began to light up. Crack, boom, boom. The stone doors began to make loud grinding sounds. Everyone took a step back. After all, the two stone doors were too big. Even just opening them gave them the feeling of a landslide. Facing these two stone doors, everyone felt how insignificant they were. However, when the two stone doors opened to their fullest, they began to close again. Go in or they'll close. Everyone hurried through the stone doors. Fortunately, the stone doors didn't close too quickly. After everyone went in, the stone doors were still slowly closing. The lava from before was still flowing along the ditch. At the same time, it illuminated the passage behind the stone doors. There were many corpses on the ground, and many metal statues were placed on both sides. Wow, these are saint carvings. Ruan Faxben exclaimed. Ruan Faxi exclaimed. The method of making the saint carving has long been lost. I didn't expect to see it again here. Saint carvings? Everyone looked at Ruan Faxben in confusion. Ruan Faxben said with a regretful expression, Unfortunately, the chairman isn't here. Otherwise he could bring all these statues back. What a pity. These statues were all 5 meters tall, and had different postures. They weighed at least a few tons. Even Gaia couldn't carry them around all the time. Ruan Faxi had been studying the statues for a while, unwilling to leave at all. Ruan, how long are you going to stay here? Chapter 1568. Just then, Moore suddenly saw a line of words at the base of the statue. But he didn't understand what it said. Mole reached out to touch the words on the base, but he erased the words instead. Crack! Suddenly the statue in front of Moore moved. Huh! This statue seems to be moving. Moore looked up at the tall statue in front of him. Of course what? Moore, get out of the way! Ruan Faxben yelled. At that moment, the statue in front of Moore suddenly raised its great sword and slashed down at Moore's head. Whoosh! Moore didn't react in time, but an elite charged forward. He dodged Moore in the blink of an eye, but everyone saw that one of Angelite's arms was cut off. An elite fell to the ground, screaming. An elite! Everyone exclaimed. Just then, the statue raised its great sword and slashed at an elite again. Boom! Jalanash also made her move. The statue was too close to an elite and Moore. She used a wind elemental spell, Violent Blast. The statue, which was several meters tall and weighed several tons, was blown several meters away and fell to the ground. Moraz went up to stop Angelite's bleeding, and then gave him a wound suppression. The statue stood up again. This time, Gaia pulled out her greatsword and blocked the statue's attack. The passage was large, but it couldn't allow Gaia to transform. But even if she didn't transform, she could still block the statue's attack. Gaia, you have to destroy it completely, Ruan Faxben said. There's a core hidden in its body. You have to break its core. Otherwise it won't stop, Ruan Faxben said. Where's the core? Not necessarily. It could be anywhere. Gaia slashed with her great sword, and the statue was sent flying again. The great sword was also broken by Gaia. However, when the divine carving statue stood up again, the broken sword was like a magnet, returning to the fracture, and the crack healed. What kind? Gaia asked. I don't know. This is the first time I've seen a statue. Boom, boom! Jalanash covered for Gaia and shot out 2 exploding flames. The statue's body was completely unharmed. The statue's body was made of metal. Jalanash's explosive bombs were powerful, but their destructive power against metal was limited. Gaia swung his great sword, leaving a fiery arc in the air as he slashed down heavily. The saint carving statue's body was directly cut off from the shoulder. But the statue's severed body was like its sword before, mending itself. Gaia frowned. There was no end to this fight. Lava! Push it into the lava! Cried Ruan Faxben. Gaia, move! Jalanash yelled. Gaia trusted Jalanash and backed away. Jalanash unleashed another violent impact. The statue was knocked into the wall, and then fell into the lava. But soon it stood up again. But how could Gaia give it a chance? The greatsword swung out and cut off the statue's legs. After losing its main body, the statue's legs quickly melted into the magma. Under Gaia's suppression, the sculpture soon melted completely. Whoosh! Moore, did you erase the words under the statue? Ruan Faxben asked in an interrogative tone. Moore knew that he was in trouble. Not only did he almost die under the statue's sword, but he also caused an elite to lose an arm. He even caused an elite to lose an arm. Moore opened his mouth, and then lowered his head silently. He didn't say anything else. Okay, now's not the time to blame. Raz, can you reattach Angelite's arm? Moraz shook his head. Angelite's wound has magic damage on it. Moraz also blamed herself. As a support, she should have protected her teammates at all times. But it had happened so suddenly that she couldn't react in time. This made her very depressed. Maybe the president has a way. Gaia nodded. She knew that now was definitely not the time to blame. Chen Zhao wasn't here, so she had to calm the team down. Okay, let's continue, Gaia said. Enrich, I'll carry you. Enrich shook his head. The wound was still painful, but with Moraz's help, he could barely hold on. No need. I can walk myself. Gaia was the absolute main force in the team now. If Gaia carried him, her combat ability would be greatly reduced. Don't worry, Gaia said. Chen will find a way to heal your broken arm. I really should buy insurance for myself, Enrich said, his face pale. As soon as this sentence was said, everyone's mood also eased. Enrich, I'm sorry. It's all my fault, Moore said, lowering his head in shame. It's okay. I can run faster without an arm. The more Enrich comforted him, the worse Moore felt. Ruan, as long as we don't erase the words on the base, the statues won't be activated, right? The words on the statues are ancient magic. They mean to stop. If you erase the words, they'll definitely be activated. Unless they're completely destroyed, they'll keep attacking the surrounding creatures. Apart from erasing the words, there's another set of rules. As long as the conditions are met, the statues will also be activated. What conditions? I don't know, Ruan said. It depends on how the owner of the statues said it. In other words, we have to be careful at all times. We don't know when the statues will be activated. Yes. Then everyone passed through the tunnel. They found that both sides of the tunnel were filled with statues. There were at least hundreds of statues along the way. It was like an army. This also made everyone's hearts jump. No one knew whether or not these saint carvings would suddenly awaken. One statue was already so difficult to deal with. If all the statues woke up at the same time, they would die for sure. Even Gaia, who had always been bold, felt her heart pounding. After walking for more than 10 minutes, they finally reached the end of the tunnel. Then their eyes lit up. An incomparably spacious field appeared in front of them. The field was at least 3 square kilometers. In the center was a circular field. Magma flowed around the field. Further away, there were rock pillars of different heights. It's so big. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1569. The sports field was surrounded by saint carvings. At the other end of the field was a mountain wall. There was a stone sculpture of a ferocious-looking dragon head on the wall. The dragon's neck extended to the center of the field like an arch bridge. Below the dragon head was a trough. Water flowed from the dragon's mouth and filled the trough in the middle. This water is so sweet. Jalanash took a sip. At this moment, everyone felt a little thirsty. Although they were protected by armor or magic dragon scales, they still felt the heat. Don't drink it yet. Let me see if it's drinkable. Ruan Faxben stepped forward and filled a bottle with some water. Then he took out some magic powder and sprinkled it into the bottle. The water in the bottle began to boil. Ruan Faxben was chanting a magic spell. The water in the bottle calmed down again. It should be fine, Ruan Faxben said. What spell is this? What does it do? This is pure true spirit spell. If the food or water is harmful to the human body, there will be a warning, Ruan Faxben said. Ruan Faxben said. Since there's no warning, it should be harmless to humans. But just then Jalanash, who had just taken a sip of water, began to tremble all over. Jalanash, what's wrong? Moraz realized that something was wrong with Jalanash. Jalanash's body trembled even more violently. Her eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of ink. I feel like... Jalanash's head drooped before she could finish her sentence. Moraz saw Jalanash's strangeness and hurried over to support her. Ruan, didn't you say that the water was fine? What's going on? Gaia asked angrily. I don't know either. Ruan Faxben was speechless too. He didn't understand why the pure true spirit spell failed either. Suddenly Jalanash raised her head. Her face was covered in black lines. By now, everyone had realized that something had happened to Jalanash. Jalanash suddenly reached out and grabbed Moraz. Jalanash, let go. Moraz cried out in pain. Gaia immediately rushed forward, grabbed Jalanash's arm, and forcefully pulled Moraz away. But Jalanash aimed her palm at Gaia's chest. Bang! Gaia was sent flying more than 10 meters away. No one expected Jalanash to be so heavy-handed on Gaia. Gaia stood up, her chest a bloody mess. Gaia spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face was extremely pale. Everyone's hair stood on end as they looked at Jalanash warily. At this time, Jalanash flew into the air and landed on the dragon's head. None of them noticed that there was a magic array on top of the dragon's head. Jalanash released black flames from her palms towards the magic circle. When the black flames landed on the magic array, they didn't explode. Instead, they were absorbed by the magic array. Suddenly, one of the saint carvings around him became familiar. Oh no, the saint carving statue. Wait, the statues aren't coming for us. Ruan Faxi realized that the statue actually passed through the crowd and jumped up when it got close to Jalanash, who was at the head of the dragon. Looking at the statue, Jalanash raised one hand and spat out black flames at the statue. Bang! The statue instantly shattered in the air. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Was Jalanash that powerful? Why didn't she use it just now? After the statue shattered in the air, it didn't recover. Jalanash continued with her work. What's Jalanash doing? I don't know. I feel like something bad is about to happen. Should we stop her? Stop? How? Jalanash doesn't even recognize us now. Even if we defeat her, what then? Kill her? Everyone's expression was grim. At this time, two more holy statues awakened. These two statues were just like the first one. They ignored everyone and attacked Jalanash directly. Jalanash still only used one hand. The remnants of the two statues fell to the ground. Jalanash, what's wrong with you? Wake up, Giselle called anxiously. She looks like she's being controlled by something, Gaia said with a serious expression. Purify. Morez cast a purification spell on Jalanash. But Jalanash didn't react. Instead, she raised her hand and released a black flame at Morez. Watch out! An elite, who had lost his arm, hurriedly grabbed Morez and escaped before the black flames reached them. Jalanash, how did you become like this? Wake up. She's being controlled. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. Everyone turned around abruptly and saw two strangers standing behind them. One was tall and skinny, the other a fat man with a big belly. Who are you? I should be the one asking you this. Who are you people? Why did you barge in here? Mason stared at the crowd coldly. I think it's best if you kill her now instead of arguing here. Otherwise we'll all die. Lila Gavich looked at Jalanash's back, his eyes filled with worry. We won't kill our companions. Companions? She's no longer your companion, Lila Gavich said meaningfully. Lila Gavich said meaningfully. She has now become Amanda Didier's puppet. Armand Didier, the legendary son of Element? Alice asked. Alice, do you know what's going on? No. Alice shook her head. Alice shook her head. I only know of Amanda Didier, the legendary son of Element. Many elemental mages use the name of the son of Element to cast many spells. At this time, four more statues awakened. Just like before, their target was Jalanash. Everyone looked at Lila Gavik in Moscow Pool. Sirs, you'd better tell us what's going on. As you can see, the dragon head is the son of elemental Armand Didier. He has been sealed here for 3,000 years, Moscow said. What about you? Who are you? The protector of this place, Mason said. At the same time, he's also a burglar, Lila Gavik added. Chapter 1570. While they were talking, another 8 statues woke up. Gaia looked at Jalanash and turned around. Is there any way to wake her up other than killing her? No, not just her. Her descendants will be cursed by Armand Didier as well. Moscow Pool pointed at Lila Gavik. Just like this bastard. Lila Gavich glanced at Moscow. You better not challenge my bottom line now. Wah! Gaia spat out another mouthful of blood. Malrez hurried over to heal Gaia. By then, Jalanash had already dealt with the 8 statues. Then the 16 statues woke up. This time, Jalanash wouldn't be able to deal with them so easily. With one hand, Jalanash continued to charge the magic circle on the dragon's head as she fought back against the statues. Klaus, do you have tranquilizer bullets? Yes. Take Jalanash down, Gaia said. Klaus took out the tranquilizer gun and its bullets. From dozens of meters away, he aimed at Jalanash. Whoosh! However, when the tranquilizer bullet was less than a meter away from Jalanash, it suddenly stopped in the air. Jalanash looked at everyone, her expression becoming even more ferocious. She spread her arms, releasing a terrifying wave of air from her body. The shockwave abruptly spread out like water ripples in all directions. *T. Moraz hurriedly cast an AoE holy barrier. When the wave reached everyone, they felt that the barrier was about to shatter. Malrez cast another holy barrier on them. And another one. After 3 buffs, they finally managed to hold on. However, the wave didn't stop. It continued to spread to the edge. The surrounding saint carvings were all affected by the shockwave. The moment they were touched by the wave, they all disintegrated. However, Jalanash seemed to be much weaker after using her ultimate move. Jalanash fell from the dragon's head and landed in the middle of the sink. We can't let her replenish her power. We have to stop her, Mosco said. With that, Mason swung his arms at Jalanash, throwing 2 daggers at her. The water trough beneath Jalanash's feet kept sending energy into her body. As for the 2 daggers flying towards her, she completely ignored them. Just like before, there seemed to be an invisible shield around Jalanash. Lila Gavich, are you going to stand aside and watch? Mosco Pool scolded. Lila Gage hesitated for a moment, then finally decided to act. Lila Gage walked towards Jalanash. Jocelyn Nash raised her hand and pointed it at Lila Gage. But in the next moment she hesitated. After a while Jalanash put down her palm. When Lila Gavich was 2 meters away from Jalanash, she stopped. Jalanash suddenly sensed Lila Gavich's hostility. In an instant Jalanash attacked Lila Gavich. Black flames burst out of Jalanash's palm. Lila Gage immediately hid in the shadows, grabbing towards Jalanash at the same time. But the moment Lila Gavich grabbed Jalanash's wrist, he felt a sharp burning pain in his palm. Lila Gage hurriedly stepped back, clutching her wrist in pain. Jalanash grabbed in the air from 3 to 4 meters away. Lila Gage immediately sensed danger. An extremely dark power surged towards her from all directions. Lila Gage's scalp was about to explode. Shadow. Luckily, shadow could be used. The hand of darkness missed. Lila Gavich turned and ran. By then, the water trough beneath Jalanash's feet had already dried up. Jalanash's aura became even more terrifying. She returned to the dragon's head and continued to charge the magic circle. Rumble, the ground started shaking slightly. We can't let this go on, we have to stop her. Mosco Pool yelled. If Amanda breaks free from the seal, all of us will die. Mosco Pool looked at Gaia and the others. What about you? Gaia's expression darkened. You don't have to do it. I'll do it. Gaia, your injuries haven't healed yet, Moraz said. It's okay, your magic has helped me recover a lot. That's not healing, it's just suppressing my injuries. It's okay. Gaia shook her head. Then she took a few steps forward. Roar! In an instant Gaia turned into a 20-meter-long fire dragon. Lila Gage and Mosco Pool stared at Gaia, dumbfounded, their faces filled with disbelief. Jalanash looked at Gaia and raised her arm to aim at her. Whoosh! Black flames shot towards Gaia again. Gaia rose into the air, dodging the black flames. However, Gaia had no choice but to avoid the black flames. At the same time, he aimed at Jalanash and spat out a mouthful of dragon breath. The dragon breath landed in front of Jalanash. Although it didn't hurt her, she took a few steps back. Jalanash had to stop charging the magic circle as well. That's amazing. Lila Gavich and Mosco Pool looked at each other. Jalanash's expression was completely twisted. This time, she changed her tactic. She raised her arms high, and a black sphere appeared above her head. The black sphere suddenly exploded, turning into countless small balls that shot in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. After the small black balls spread to the surrounding space, they exploded again. Gaia was too big and couldn't avoid all the black balls. In an instant, black flames erupted from Gaia's body. Gaia let out a dragon roar and landed heavily on the ground. But then Gaia stood up again. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly a figure appeared behind Jalanash. An elite had appeared there at some point. But the moment an elite got close to Jalanash, he was blocked by an invisible barrier around her. An elite instantly fled from that spot. Jalanash's eyes were pitch black and emotionless. She pointed in the direction Angelit escaped, and pointed with her finger. Holy light barrier. Morez immediately cast a holy light barrier on Angelit. But the holy light barrier was instantly broken. Angelite's shoulder was pierced by the black light. He rolled on the ground a few times. Klaus, cover me, Moore said in a low voice. Moore's clone had already secretly appeared on the dragon's neck, and was carefully reaching for Jalanash. Klaus and the others also fired wildly at Jalanash. Chapter 1571. Da-da-da. Klaus and the lightning squad fired at Jalanash. Under their fire, ripples appeared around Jalanash. Jalanash looked at Klaus and the others. She was about to attack Klaus when Moore's clone pounced. Boom! This was a spell Moore had just learned, self-destruct. Now Moore didn't need to carry a bag of explosives every time he used a clone. Moore's self-destruct spell was quite powerful. The explosion was equivalent to a kilogram of yellow explosives. But the moment the explosion spread, it contracted violently. That feeling was like a movie being played backwards. After the flames disappeared, Jalanash stood in the same spot unharmed. Everyone's expression turned solemn. Such a terrifying explosion had no effect on Jalanash. Jalanash continued to charge the magic circle. The terrifying atmosphere continued to spread. Everyone felt an indescribable sense of despair in their hearts. Just then Gaia stood up again. Roar! Jalanash shot black flames at Gaia from her palm. Gaia also breathed dragon breath at the same time. Two flames, one black and one red, met in the air. Klaus took out his sniper rifle and pointed it at Jalanash, but he lowered the muzzle slightly. Bang! The power of a large-caliber sniper rifle was extraordinary. Jalanash's body trembled slightly. Although it wasn't a big impact, it did affect her a little. Angelit also climbed up at this time. His shoulder was bleeding profusely. Moore razzed through a healing spell, and a holy barrier to Angelit from a distance. Angelit closed in on Jalanash again. Angelite's attack power wasn't strong, but it didn't mean he was defenseless. Angelite's dagger stabbed out dozens of times in an instant, and every time, it was at the same spot. Klaus's eyes glinted. He swung his sniper rifle and fired a bullet. Bang! The bullet hit the spot where Angelit had attacked. The bullet pierced Jalanash's protective shield and hit her shoulder at the same time. Jalanash took a few steps back. Her shoulder was badly mangled. They were still companions. Klaus hadn't aimed at Jalanash's vitals. If it had been any other position, a sniper rifle bullet would have been enough to tear his body apart. Even heavily injured, Jalanash remained expressionless. But at this time, Gaia's dragon breath had already shot over. Bang! The impact of the explosion was shocking, but the result was the same as Moer's self-destruction. But everyone saw clearly how Jalanash did it. She opened her mouth and sucked in the dragon breath. Everyone's expression froze. Is that even possible? The wound on Jalanash's shoulder was healing at a visible rate. This was a heavy blow to everyone. The damage they had dealt to Jalanash with all their might had lost its effect in the blink of an eye. At that moment, a large number of saint carvings began to pour out of the tunnel. All of the divine carvings awakened. Their target was also very clear. It was Jolene Nash. There was a huge number of them, at least 500 of them. Furthermore, every single one of them was extremely powerful. Guya's heart stirred, and he spat out dragon breath again. She did not hope to defeat Jalanash, but at least to restrain her. But this time, Jalanash did not intend to take it at all. Jalanash clenched her fists, and a pair of giant black palms appeared out of thin air. One of the black palms blocked Guya's dragon breath. The other clenched fist smashed towards Guya. Guya was smashed heavily, and was flung dozens of meters away. The pair of black palms was so powerful that the saint carvings could not even reach the center of the square. With just the palms, it was like swatting flies. Every time the black palms landed, dozens of them would be flattened. This lethality, this speed of killing. No matter how many saint carvings there were, they could not withstand being killed. Everyone was in despair. Right now, Jalanash could not be defeated at all. And Jalanash did not care about the incoming saint carvings at all. She continued with her work. Everyone felt as if a rock was pressing down on their hearts. The rocks around the dragon's head and neck were crumbling. Just then Dragon's eyes lit up. It was a pair of turbid eyes. Just looking into those eyes sent chills down everyone's spine. Mescopool and Lila Gavik looked at each other. At this moment, there was no hostility between them. There was only despair. Rumble. Just then, a few hills outside the square suddenly exploded. Then, 4 huge figures rushed out from the ruins of the hills. Dragons. They were 4 dragons, red, white, yellow, and azure. Everyone was shocked by this sudden turn of events. They were real dragons. Its huge body was like a small mountain. They exuded a suffocating dragon's aura. No one knew if these 4 dragons were friends or foes. If they were enemies, then it was all over. One Jalanash was already too much for them to handle. Now that there were 4 more dragons, they were no match for them. However, if they are friends, maybe things would turn around. The 4 dragons circled around in the air for a while. The red dragon saw Gaia and landed beside Gaia. Then, it transformed into a tall woman of the same build. Descendant of our race. I never thought there would be descendants of our race in the human world. This fire dragon woman was even taller than Guya. When she mentioned Guya, everyone immediately tensed up. What are you doing? Everyone looked at the fire dragon woman warily. Don't you want me to save her? The power of darkness is killing her life. Hearing this woman's words, everyone stopped in their tracks. The woman sent her power into Guya's body, and Guya's wounds began to heal slowly. Seeing that Guya was recovering, and that the woman didn't hurt him, everyone sighed in relief. At this moment, the yellow, white, and azure dragons in the sky dove at Jalanash. Rumble. At this moment, the rocks under Jalanash's feet suddenly cracked. A bloody mouth suddenly shot up into the sky and bit the yellow dragon in one bite. Roar! The 100-meter-long yellow dragon's body was directly torn apart by that bloody mouth. Everyone's heart went cold, their faces full of fear. That was a dragon. That was a 100-meter-long dragon, and it was killed in one move just like that? The rocks completely cracked, and Amanda Didier finally broke free from the seal. Just the exposed dragon head and neck were already 100 meters long. His entire body was probably over 300 meters long. This was a real giant. Chapter 1572. Amanda Dill chewed on a third of the yellow dragon's body and swallowed it. As if that wasn't enough, Amanda Dill lowered his head and stuffed the rest of the yellow dragon into his mouth as well. At this time, the rock wall connected to Amanda Dill's neck also began to crack. He had finally broken free from the seal. At this moment, everyone clearly saw Amanda Dill's true body. Amanda Dill was also a dragon, but he didn't have wings. He looked like a lizard. Maybe the salamanders that were wreaking havoc here had something to do with him. Amanda Dill's body was mainly black. However, there were delicate red, green, blue, and gray patterns on the black scales. His front limbs were ridiculously thick and strong, unlike ordinary giant dragons whose limbs were more well-proportioned. His hind limbs were longer, making him look like a bodybuilder who had trained too much. However, in everyone's eyes, he looked more like a deformed monster. He didn't have wings on his back, but he had a pair of huge bone spikes. His tail, which was dozens of meters long, also had a row of bone spikes of different lengths. The 3 dragons also changed their expressions. Suddenly, Amanda Dill swung his tail at the white dragon. The white dragon dodged immediately, but the bone spikes on Amanda Dill's tail cut through the white dragon's wings. The white dragon, which had just risen into the air, crashed to the ground. Amanda Dill lunged at the white dragon in a frenzy. Roar! The white dragon screamed in pain. Amanda Dill had already bitten its neck. With a crack, it was broken. The red dragon and the green dragon, who had returned to their dragon forms, breathed out at the same time. They wanted to stop Amanda Dill from devouring their companion. However, Amanda Didier simply turned a blind eye to the 2 dragons' dragon breaths. He devoured the white dragon's body in a frenzy. Everyone was trembling under Amanda Dill's terrifying aura. He was the embodiment of madness. I'm so happy. You even prepared food for me when I broke the seal. After eating the white dragon, Amanda Dill turned his eyes to the red and green dragons. His teeth were far more developed than normal dragons. His physique was also several times that of normal dragons. Everyone could feel a torrential aura emanating from his body. It was the same for the red and green dragons. However, they did not flee. They were still trying to hurt Amanda Dill. However, Amanda Deer's thick dragon scales were so powerful that they felt despair. Amanda Deer's hind legs kicked hard, and it pounced towards the gathering red. The red dragon tried to escape, but Amanda Didier was too fast. His strength and speed completely suppressed the red dragon. Armand Dill grabbed the red dragon with his forelegs. Roar! The red dragon struggled, but Amanda Didier's power made it impossible for her to resist. Amanda Didier pulled hard, and one of the red dragon's wings was torn off. The red dragon screamed. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts, but against such a prehistoric monster, they were powerless. In the beginning, they thought that the appearance of the 4 giant dragons would bring about a turning point. However, they found that the 4 dragons could do nothing against Amanda Didier. In fact, they were only here to deliver food. They could only watch as Amanda Didier ravaged the red dragon. But there was nothing they could do. Amanda Didier tore off the red dragon's flesh piece by piece and stuffed it into his mouth. Blood splattered on the square. Finally, the red dragon lost its vitality. Amanda Didier nibbled away at the remaining flesh of the red dragon. The green dragon tried to resist one last time, but there was no effect. Amanda Didier ate the red dragon unhurriedly. He was not in a hurry to fight back against the green dragon. Undine looked at the 2 huge stone doors before her. Chen Zhao kept looking at them. "You elves are really awesome," he said, sighing. "You can even do such a huge project. And it was 3,000 years ago. Mom, how do I open these doors?" "I don't know." Undine shook her head. Chen Zhao walked up and forcefully pushed open the 2 stone doors. A human-sized gap appeared in the stone door. Undine looked at Chen Zhao in surprise. "You can do that. Hurry up. Don't drag your feet. These doors are heavy." Actually, the doors weren't as heavy as they thought. They only weighed about 2,000 tons. This weight was quite light for Chen Zhao. Undine, Bader, and Bauer hurriedly passed through the doors. Only then did Chen Zhao rush in before the doors closed. Rumble. Just then there was a huge sound in front of them. The passageway behind the stone door trembled, and the gravel above them fell continuously. "Hurry up," Undine said. "The tunnel looks like it's going to collapse." The 4 of them scampered forward. However, when they ran through the passageway, they saw an unbelievably large beast devouring a green dragon. "Wow! Did I miss something?" Chen Zhao exclaimed. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao. When the members of the association saw Chen Zhao, they couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Amanda Didier glanced at Chen Zhao's group. "A few more are here to die. My servants, go kill them. A few more have come to die. My servants, go and kill them." He clearly wasn't interested in these humans. They weren't even enough for him. Chen Zhao looked at Jalanash, who was floating in the air. Chen Zhao looked at Jalanash, who was floating in the air. Can someone explain to me if that's Jalanash?" "President, Jalanash is being controlled," Ruan Faxben said. Chen Zhao took off his helmet and waved at Jalanash. "Jalanash, it's me. Do you recognize me?" Lila Gavik and Moscow Pearl looked at him in surprise. How could it be him? Were these people his subordinates? Just then, Jalanash raised her arms and pointed at him. "Watch out!" Lila Gavik shouted. They had suffered at Jalanash's hands. They knew exactly how scary Jolene Nash was. Who black flames shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised his hand, and the black flames charged at him. The power of this flame seemed to be very ordinary, not even as hot as the magma. However, these black flames seemed to have some sort of corrosive power. Unfortunately, it was also of little threat to Chen Zhao. Everyone realized that Jalanash's ultimate move didn't seem to work on Chen Zhao. "Jalanash, if you do this again, I'll spank you." Jalanash's black flames suddenly paused. Her face finally showed some expression. However, she seemed to be in great pain. The next moment, her painful expression disappeared. She was just as expressionless as before. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1573. Lila Gavik and Moscow Pool were speechless. "Spank her? You'd have to be able to do that. President, it's useless. Jalanash doesn't seem to have her own consciousness. Think of something, Moraz said. Chen Zhao was in a difficult position. He definitely couldn't kill Jalanash. Not in this lifetime. Do you have any way to make my subordinates wake up? Chen Zhao asked. Hee. Human, kill me and she'll wake up. Amanda Didier had already eaten the last of the green dragons. I see. Chen Zhao touched his chin. Then I'll kill you. Everyone thought that Chen Zhao was crazy. Even the members of the association didn't have much confidence in Chen Zhao now. They'd seen with their own eyes how terrifying and crazy Amanda Didier was. The 4 dragons were like little pets in front of him. Before that, you'll have to defeat my slave first, Armandidir said in a mocking tone. Chen Zhao looked at Jalanash and threaded the needle. The invisible thread wrapped around Jalanash's body. Jalanash instantly fell from the sky and was dragged in front of Chen Zhao. Everyone was stunned. How did Chen Zhao do it? Chen Zhao didn't even move. How did he catch Jalanash? Lila Gavik and Moscow Prior were both shocked and bewildered. After all, they had been beaten up badly by Jalanash before. But Chen Zhao had caught Jalanash so easily. Were they cheating? Both of them were very disappointed. If Chen Zhao could find something, Amanda Didier wouldn't have broken the seal. Now that Amanda Didier had broken free from the seal, it was too late. Surprise flashed in Undine's eyes. She thought back to the Abyss Nestmaker she'd encountered before. The Abyssal Nestmaker's movements seemed to be restrained by an invisible force. It seemed that Chen Zhao had really helped him in secret that time. Chen Zhao used the invisible thread to lift Jalanash before him, and patted her face. Jalanash, wake up. President, it's useless. Jalanash can't wake up, Ungalit said. Ungalit, you're your shoulder? Was it done by this ugly guy? Chen Zhao's anger was full. He looked up at Amanda Didier. Very well, you've angered me. Very imposing, but... Amanda Didier's huge claw slapped Chen Zhao's head. But it's nothing before me. Rumble. Everyone's expression froze. Was it over? Just like that. Hearing Chen Zhao's confident tone, they had thought that Chen Zhao had some ability. In the end, he was slapped to death by Armand Didier. Roar suddenly. Amanda Didier let out a strange cry and quickly retreated. His left forearm was bloody. Chen Zhao was hugging a thick pillar. The black pillar was Armand Dill's toe. Chen Zhao threw the claw into the dark lava. Chen Zhao instinctively liked it. Just like when he encountered Mikados and his army of dead fetus monsters. Everyone stared at Chen Zhao dumbfounded. Their expressions were completely frozen. Did Chen Zhao pull off Amanda Dill's toe? How was that possible? Looks like you taste good, Chen Zhao said, grinning. I'm going to kill you. Furious, Amanda Didier swung his huge claw again. This time, he didn't attack recklessly. He attached dark power to his claw. Chen Zhao wasn't afraid at all. Fist. A green fist whizzed out. Boom. Amanda Didier took a step back. Undine, Bauer and Bader's eyes almost popped out. Along the way, they only had one impression of Chen Zhao. That was nagging. Apart from nagging, Chen Zhao didn't show any power at all. But now they realized that Chen Zhao just didn't show it. When Chen Zhao truly showed it, it was a frightening power. Human, you actually made me retreat. You're not bad, but it's not enough. Far from enough. Do you think you can defeat me just like that? You're too naive. You don't understand what you're facing. I'm a demigod. Not enough. Clone, all powers return to one. You can try now. Chen Zhao widened his eyes. Flames seemed to shoot out of them. I'll smash your head. Rumble, Amanda Didier's tail swung over. Chen Zhao was lifted into the air and smashed heavily into the wall outside the square. Everyone felt a piercingly cold tearing sensation as the wind whistled past them. Is that all you have? Chen Zhao stood up from the rubble again. Die. Amanda Didier suddenly opened his mouth and black flames shot toward Chen Zhao. Amanda Didier's black flames weren't the same as Jalanash's. It was more than 100 times more powerful. Shut your dog mouth. Chen Zhao punched again. The solid fist went against the black flames and smashed into Amanda Didier's mouth. Uffed. The teeth in Amanda Didier's mouth were so tight that they almost broke. His huge body was forced to take several steps back. Demigod or God are just self-titled titles. You're a demigod? Chen Zhao patted the black flames on his body. I can kill a dozen of you even with my eyes closed. Amanda Deer spat out a mouthful of blood and a few broken teeth. His expression became even more savage and furious. Human, you succeeded. You've successfully angered me. I've always been very successful at angering people. Chen Zhao shrugged. I'm going to eat you. On this point, we have a common understanding. I also want to eat you. Amanda Deer's front limbs smashed into the ground. The entire square shook. Do you really think you can beat me? I really do, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Chen Zhao strolled toward Amanda Deer. Amanda Deer didn't dare to be careless now. He hadn't used his full strength in the exchange just now, but he could feel Chen Zhao's threat. Chen Zhao's ferocious eyes flashed. Before I kill you, I have one last question for you. I'll allow you to ask me one last question before you die. Are you Hyperion? What? Amanda Deer froze. But Chen Zhao's attack had already arrived. Fist shadows storm. Without holding back, Chen Zhao poured out all the immortal power in his body. Chapter 1574. The first punch landed on Amanda Didier's chin. Dragon blood spurted out of Amanda Didier's mouth. Before he could react, an even more brutal attack was already upon him. Everyone was watching, and the shock in their hearts could not be any greater. Chen Zhao's every punch tore through a piece of flesh. His fists were also so fast that no one could see them clearly. Bang! The bone spur on Amanda Didier's back that looked like a triangular blade had already shattered under Chen Zhao's attacks. Chen Zhao dashed over and broke the bone spur with one punch. Then he grabbed it and pressed it down. Amanda Didier's body was pierced by his own bone spur. Roar! The sky fell and the ground cracked. Amanda Didier's roar caused the ground to shake. Amanda Didier slapped his claws at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao turned around and punched. Amanda Didier's claws shattered. Chen Zhao jumped onto Amanda Didier's head. Grabbing two protruding horns, he pressed his body down. Amanda Didier's huge head smashed onto the ground. Everyone stayed far away from him. The shockwaves from the battle between the two could kill them. Chen Zhao started smashing down on Amanda Didier's head. Roar! Stop! Stop! I'll dispel. I said I'd smash your head, so I'll do it. Chen Zhao's tone was fierce. Bang! Chen Zhao punched down, and Amanda Didier's head smashed onto the ground again. Blood spurted out of his mouth, nose, and eyes. The shockwaves spread in all directions. The power of this punch was more than a few 100,000 tons. It was easy to imagine how great the impact was. The original circular plaza had already been completely destroyed. Chen Zhao's dark lava couldn't devour Amanda Didier's body completely. His body was simply too huge. So, Chen Zhao planned to dismember him. Amanda Didier's life force was too tenacious. Chen Zhao broke his neck, but he wasn't dead yet. Whoosh! Ruan Faxi was resisting the waves of attacks that were whistling towards him. Behind him, Morres kept putting light barriers on him. President, leave some for us, Ruan Faxibin shouted. Originally, he had thought that after the battle was over, he would be able to get as many corpses as he wanted. But he soon realized that every time Chen Zhao peeled off a piece of Amanda Didier's flesh, it would be swallowed by the dark lava around him. Clearly, Chen Zhao planned to devour Amanda Didier's flesh completely. Amanda Didier's flesh, skin, and scales were all rare treasures. It was even more valuable than the ordinary dragons stored in the association's warehouse. Chen Zhao swung hard and broke off a dragon horn that was more than 30 meters long. He tossed it to Ruan Fazibin. Ruan Faxi covered his head in fear. The dragon horn slid a few meters in front of him before stopping. As Chen Zhao devoured, the dark lava grew larger and larger. The dark magma began to envelop Armandidir's huge body. Armandidir's head was already a bloody mess, but he was not dead yet. He tried to stand up several times, but he couldn't do anything. Chen Zhao suppressed him with all his might. To the members of the association, they once again realized how terrifying Chen Zhao was. As for Lilagavich, he was a bit scared. He thought of what had happened a few days ago. He had brought people to stop Chen Zhao. Now that he thought about it, it definitely wasn't something funny. It was something that made his hair stand on end. If he had lost control even a little bit, then, could he still be standing here? It was like an ant challenging an elephant. Undine also felt the same. Fortunately, they hadn't had any conflict before. Angering Chun Zhao would definitely not end well. When Armendadir was completely devoured, Chun Zhao discovered to his surprise that the amount of dark magma had increased by 10 times. Chun Zhao deactivated 10,000 spells in one and his clone. He let out a long breath. This battle definitely wasn't as easy as it seemed. Chun Zhao also used his full strength. He didn't dare to hold back at all. As for Armendadir's self-proclaimed demigod, Chun Zhao snorted. Back then, the source of the fallen had called itself a god. So this so-called god, or demigod, was just their own conceit. Even the current Chun Zhao would definitely be able to take on the title of god in a certain era. Chun Zhao went to Jalanash. Jalanash was still unconscious. The black lines on her face were fading. Mores had been examining Jalanash all this time. Jalanash finally woke up. But when she saw the mess, she froze. What happened? President, you're back. How do you feel? Chun Zhao asked. I'm fine. What's wrong? Nothing. They didn't hate Jalanash at all. But to her, they were both angry and amused. Mr. Chun, how about we talk? Lila Gavich walked to Chun Zhao. Now Lila Gavich didn't dare to look down on everyone like he did before. If he really angered Chun Zhao, he wouldn't even be able to take a slap. Jalanash was still in a daze. Where did these extra people come from? How did she faint? And what happened after she fainted? She felt like she had missed many things. She looked at her companions, who were looking at her with half-smiles. Jalanash had a bad feeling. She felt that what had happened had something to do with her. Chun Zhao walked to Lila Gavich. What is it? Mr. Chun, I want to buy your Armendadir's blood. Chun Zhao looked around. He'd just fought with Armendadir. The ground was covered in Armendadir's blood, right? Isn't it all over the ground? Armendadir shook his head. These have lost their value once they leave the body. What I want is the blood and flesh on Armendadir's dragon horn. The dragon horn Chun Zhao had put away had been torn off directly. There was still a lot of blood and flesh on it. What's the price? Chun Zhao asked. Mr. Chun, you can't sell Armendadir's blood to him. He's a dirty bastard. Moscow priest immediately went up to stop him. Lila Gavich sneered inwardly, but he didn't stop Moscow's attack. If Moscow didn't say anything, Chun Zhao would probably think about it. But Moscow priest was attacking him like this. How could Chun Zhao listen to him? Indeed, it was as Lila had said. Chun Zhao glanced at Moscow coldly. What does my deal with him have to do with you? Moscow cursed inwardly. He'd been too impulsive just now. He had no right to ask Chun Zhao to do anything. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.